They left him in the snow like garbage. A mail-order husband rejected the moment his bride-to-be saw the wheelchair. Crippled was the word she spat before her brothers drove away, their laughter echoing across Silver Bend's frozen platform. Elias Boone had survived cavalry battles, frontier winters, and the loss of his legs. But nothing prepared him for the cruelty of hope betrayed. Yet what happened next, when a washerwoman with her own scars found him in the mud, would prove that true love doesn't need legs to stand on. Stay until the end and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The train's whistle cut through the Colorado morning like a preacher's final amen, sharp, declarative, absolute. Steam rolled across the platform in Silver Bend, coating the February air with the smell of coal and hot iron. Passengers disembarked in clusters, their breath forming small clouds that dissolved into the gray sky. Among them, pushed by a porter who looked embarrassed to be doing the job, came Elias Boone. His wheelchair, a contraption of bent wood and iron wheels that squeaked with every rotation, carved thin lines through the platform's dusting of snow. The porter, a young man with red ears and a nervous Adam's apple, positioned Elias near the station wall and stepped back quickly, as if disability might be contagious. "She said she'd meet you here, sir," the porter muttered, already retreating. "The widow Mrs. Thornton said to look for a woman in a green coat." Elias nodded, his jaw tight. His hands, scarred, calloused, still strong, despite everything else, rested on the wheels of his chair. In his lap lay a leather satchel containing everything he owned: 3 shirts, a razor, a photograph of his mother, and the letters. God, those letters. 6 months of correspondence with Margaret Thornton, widow of a Silver Bend merchant. Words carefully chosen, penned by lamplight in a cramped Denver boarding house. He'd been honest about his service. 3rd Colorado Cavalry, 3 years on the frontier. Honest about his skills, tracking, hunting, reading, figures. He could keep books. He could shoot. He could provide. What he hadn't mentioned, what the carefully neutral phrasing of his letters had skirted around, was the reason he'd been discharged in 1879. The reason he'd spent the last 3 years doing odd jobs, living small, trying to piece together something like a future from the wreckage of his past. The horse accident that had crushed his legs hadn't just taken his ability to walk. It had taken his identity. Cavalry scouts moved. They rode. They ranged across impossible distances and came back alive. Elias Boone had been the best, until the day a spooked mare threw him into a ravine and he'd woken up in an army hospital with a surgeon telling him he'd never stand again. "Mr. Boone?" The voice came from his left, female, uncertain. He turned, and there she was. Margaret Thornton, just as she'd described herself. Tall, handsome, in a severe way, somewhere past 40. The green coat hung well on her frame. Her face was composed, neutral, the face of a woman accustomed to conducting business. But her eyes went straight to the wheelchair, and something in them changed. Not disgust, not yet, just calculation, assessment, the look of someone measuring a purchase and finding it wanting. "Mrs. Thornton." Elias removed his hat, an old cavalry Stetson that had survived better than his legs. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person." She didn't move closer. Behind her, 2 men emerged from a wagon parked at the platform's edge. Her brothers, Elias guessed. Big men, ranch-built, with the kind of shoulders that came from years of hard work. They flanked her like sentries, their expressions already hardening. "You didn't mention you were crippled." Margaret's voice had gone flat, businesslike. The warmth from her letters, the ones where she'd written about loneliness, about wanting a companion who understood loss, about building something together, had evaporated like the steam from the train. "I'm injured, ma'am, not crippled." Elias kept his voice steady, though something cold was beginning to spread through his chest. "I can work. I can provide. Everything I wrote about my skills, that's all true. I just do it sitting down." One of the brothers snorted. "How's a man in a chair going to run a household? How's he going to help with stock, with repairs, with any damn thing that matters?" "Thomas, please." Margaret held up a hand, but her heart wasn't in the reprimand. She was still looking at Elias, and now the assessment had become something worse. Pity. "Mr. Boone, I'm sure you're a fine man. Your letters were eloquent. But I need a partner. someone who can share the work. I have a business to run, a household to manage. I can't. She paused, searching for words that might sound kinder than what she meant. I can't take on a burden. I'm not asking to be taken on. Elias's hands tightened on his wheels. Pride was a luxury he couldn't afford, but damned if he'd beg. I'm asking for a chance to prove what I wrote. Give me a week. If I can't pull my weight, I'll leave. No obligation. Jesus Christ, the other brother muttered. We're not running a charity, Margaret. You put an ad out for a husband, not a ward. Margaret's face had set like concrete. I'm sorry, Mr. Boone, this was a mistake. I should have been more explicit in my advertisement. You should have been more forthcoming in your letters. I was forthcoming about everything that matters. Clearly, we disagree on what matters. She was already turning away, her brothers moving to flank her path back to the wagon. Thomas, give him money for a return ticket. Keep your money. The words came out harder than Elias intended, but he was past caring. I'll manage. Thomas pulled a few bills from his pocket anyway, tossing them onto Elias's lap like alms for a beggar. Buy yourself a drink, soldier. Maybe you'll have better luck in the next town. They were walking away now, Margaret's green coat disappearing into the wagon. Other passengers on the platform had stopped to watch the scene unfold. A public rejection, performed like theater for anyone with eyes. Elias felt their stares, heard their whispers. The crippled man. The soldier who couldn't soldier. The mail-order husband nobody wanted. The wagon pulled away, its wheels cutting fresh tracks through the snow. From inside, Elias heard laughter. The brothers, finding something hilarious in the morning's events. The sound carried across the platform, and several onlookers chuckled along, as if cruelty were a joke they were all in on. Elias sat there, snow beginning to accumulate on his shoulders, the bills still lying in his lap. He should pick them up. He should wheel himself toward the ticket office and buy passage back to Denver, back to his cramped room and odd jobs, and the slow, grinding poverty of a man the world had no use for. Instead, he looked at the letter in his hand, Margaret's last letter, the one where she'd written about Silver Bend's beauty, about the mountains in spring, about hope. He'd read it so many times the creases had worn soft as cloth. Now, sitting in the snow with laughter still echoing behind him, the words felt like a ghost story, something dead trying to convince itself it was alive. He folded the letter carefully, tucked it back into his satchel, and looked up at the town spreading before him. Silver Bend, Colorado Territory. Population maybe 500, perched in a valley where the mountains broke the wind but not the cold. A main street of mud and boardwalk, buildings that still looked half-constructed, like the town itself wasn't sure if it would last. This was the frontier, raw, unfinished, indifferent to sentiment. You need help, mister? The voice belonged to a boy, maybe 12, with a face full of freckles and curiosity. He'd wandered over from where his mother was loading supplies into a cart, drawn by the spectacle of the rejected suitor. I'm fine, son. You don't look fine. You look like you're fixing to freeze. Elias almost smiled. Fair assessment. You know where a man can find a boarding house in this town? The boy pointed east. Mrs. Carlyle runs one, 3 blocks that way, but it's got stairs. Of course it does. There's the livery, the boy continued, undeterred. Mr. Hutchins sometimes lets people sleep in the loft if they're down on luck. It's warm, at least. Smells like horse shit, but warm. Language, Billy, the mother's voice carried across the platform. The boy grinned, unrepentant, and ran back to help with the supplies. Elias pocketed Thomas's money, pride was one thing, survival another, and began wheeling himself toward the street. The chair's wheels caught on every uneven board, every patch of ice. What would have been a simple walk became an exercise in navigation and determination. People moved out of his way, but not kindly, more like they were avoiding something diseased, something they didn't want to touch. He'd made it halfway down the platform when one of the wheels hit a patch of black ice. The chair lurched, tilted, and suddenly Elias was falling. His hand shot out instinctively, but there was nothing to grab. He hit the boards hard, his shoulder taking the impact, his satchel spilling open and scattering his possessions across the platform. For a moment, he just lay there, tasting blood from where he'd bitten his lip. Above him, The sky was that particular shade of gray that promised more snow. Around him, Boots stepped carefully over his scattered belongings, his shirts, his razor, the photograph of his mother face down in a puddle. Nobody helped. They looked, they noticed, but nobody helped. Jesus Christ, Elias muttered to the sky. You got a real sense of humor, you know that? He rolled onto his stomach, dragging himself back toward the wheelchair. His legs, useless, heavy things he'd learned to think of as cargo rather than limbs, scraped across the boards. His hands, at least, still worked. They'd always worked. He'd hauled himself up cliff faces and across ravines with these hands. A train platform shouldn't have been a challenge. But it was. Every inch was a challenge, every movement a reminder of what he'd lost. He'd almost reached the chair when someone finally spoke. Hold on, let me help you. The voice was female, younger than Margaret's, with an accent that suggested education fighting against hard years. Elias looked up and saw her, a woman in a faded blue dress and a shawl so worn it was almost transparent. Her hands, when she reached down to help him, were raw and red from cold, or work, or both. I can manage, he said automatically. I'm sure you can. She was already gathering his scattered belongings, moving with efficient grace. But you'll manage faster with help. You're bleeding. He touched his lip, came away with blood. It's nothing. It's something. She'd collected his things, placing them carefully back in his satchel. Now she moved to the wheelchair, studying its mechanics with the focus of someone solving a problem. If I write this, can you get yourself back in? Yes. She didn't coddle him, didn't offer empty encouragement. She just tipped the chair back onto its wheels, positioned it close to where he lay, and stepped back. Elias pulled himself up, his arms doing the work his legs couldn't, and settled back into the seat with practiced efficiency. Thank you, he said. You're welcome. She handed him his satchel, then his hat, which had rolled several feet away. I'm Clara Dillard. Elias Boone. I know. I saw what happened with Mrs. Thornton. Clara's face showed neither pity nor judgment, just a kind of weary understanding. She's not a bad woman, just a practical one. This town makes you practical fast or it breaks you. Feels like it's going for option 2 with me. A ghost of a smile touched Clara's lips. The day's young yet. She glanced back toward town, where smoke from morning fires rose in thin columns. You need somewhere to stay? The boy mentioned a livery. Mr. Hutchins is good people, but that loft's no place for winter. Clara hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. I work at the laundry house, back of the hotel. There's a storage room, nothing fancy, but it's dry and it's got a stove. Nobody's using it right now. I can't take charity. It's not charity. We need someone to watch the place nights. Had some kids breaking in to steal soap. You keep an eye on things, you can sleep there. Fair trade. It probably wasn't true about the kids, but the lie was kind enough that Elias didn't challenge it. Fair trade, he agreed. Clara nodded. Come on then. Before this cold finishes what Mrs. Thornton started. She walked beside him as he wheeled through town, her pace matching his without making a show of it. Silver Bend revealed itself in pieces. A mercantile with windows full of goods, a saloon already showing signs of morning business, a church with a steeple that leaned slightly east like it was trying to escape. People watched them pass, their expressions ranging from curious to contemptuous. The crippled stranger and the washerwoman. Silver Bend would be talking about this for weeks. The laundry house sat behind the Silver Bend Hotel, a rough structure of weathered wood and steam. Inside, the air was thick with moisture and lye soap. 3 large washtubs dominated the space, and lines strung wall to wall held what looked like half the town's linens. Another woman worked at one of the tubs, her sleeves rolled up, her face red from heat and effort. Sarah, this is Mr. Boone, Claire announced. He's going to be watching the place nights. Sarah looked up, took in Elias in his chair with one long glance, and shrugged. Fine by me. Maybe he'll scare off those kids better than we did. The storage room was exactly what Clara had promised. Small, plain, with a potbelly stove and one narrow window. A cot had been shoved in one corner, covered with blankets that had seen better days but looked clean. It smelled of soap and wood smoke. It's not much, Clara said. It's perfect. Elias meant it. 4 walls, a roof, heat. After 3 hours in Silver Bend, he'd learned not to expect more. I'll be outside if you need anything. We work till about 6 most days. She turned to leave, then paused. Mr. Boone, don't let Margaret Thornton speak for this whole town. Some of us still believe in giving people a chance. Then she was gone, leaving Elias alone in his new quarters. He positioned his chair near the stove, warming his hands over the growing heat. Through the thin walls, he could hear the women working, the splash of water, the rhythm of scrubbing, occasional conversation he couldn't quite make out. He pulled out Margaret's letters, reading them again in the stove's light. The words hadn't changed, but they felt different now. Not lies, exactly. More like wishes written by someone who'd convinced herself she believed them. She'd wanted a partner, yes, but she'd wanted a whole partner. A man who could stand beside her, not sit. Elias added the letters to the stove's fire one by one, watching the ink curl and blacken. 6 months of hope reduced to ash in under a minute. But as the last letter burned, he heard Clara laugh at something Sarah said, and the sound was warmer than the fire. Different kind of hope, maybe. The kind that didn't announce itself in careful prose. The kind that just showed up and helped you off a frozen platform. That night, Elias learned the rhythms of the laundry house. The work ended around 6, as Clara had promised. The women banked the fires, dumped the wash water, and hung the last of the day's loads. Their voices drifted through his door, tired, easy, comfortable with each other. "You coming to the social Saturday?" Sarah asked. "Can't. Mrs. Henderson needs her dining linens done for Sunday dinner." "That woman's going to work you to death, Clara. Better than the alternative." There was a pause. "How's Tom?" "Still drinking, still mean about it." Sarah's voice had gone flat. "I'm thinking about taking the kids to my sister's in Denver." "You should. He's not going to change." Easy to say, harder to do. They left together, Sarah calling a goodbye to Elias that he returned through the closed door. Then silence, broken only by the stove's crackle and the distant sounds of Silver Bend settling into evening. Elias transferred from his chair to the cot, an awkward maneuver he'd learned to do efficiently, if not gracefully. The blanket smelled like lye and lavender. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, letting the day replay itself. The train, Margaret, the fall, Clara. He should have been angry. Part of him was, the part that had read Margaret's letters and believed them, that had spent his last money on train fare, that had allowed himself to hope. But mostly, he was tired. The kind of tired that came from carrying weight that had no business being so heavy. Tomorrow, he'd figure out what came next. Tonight, he was warm and dry, and that would have to be enough. The days that followed developed their own pattern. Elias woke with the dawn, kept the stove burning, and made himself useful in small ways. He organized the storage room, fixing shelves that had come loose, sorting supplies that had gotten jumbled. The women arrived around 7, Clara usually first, and the work began. He watched them work that first week, learning their rhythms. Clara handled the soaking and initial scrubbing, the hardest labor, which she took without complaint. Sarah did the rinsing and wringing, a job that required strength and timing. Together they could process mountains of laundry, their efficiency born from years of partnership. "You need something, Mr. Boone?" Claire asked one morning, catching him watching. "Just appreciating competence when I see it." She smiled, surprised. Laundry's not most people's idea of competence. Most people are idiots. That earned him a real laugh, full and genuine. Fair point. By the second week, he'd begun helping where he could, sorting, folding, keeping the books. The laundry did good business, but the records were a mess. Elias had learned accounting in the cavalry, keeping track of supplies and expenses. Within a few days, he'd organized their receipts, identified customers who hadn't paid, and suggested a pricing structure that would actually cover their costs. "You're worth more than night watchman wages," Clara observed, reviewing his work. "Maybe, but night watchman's what you hired me for. Sarah and I could pay you properly if you'd let us. The room and meals are payment enough." "It really isn't." But Elias was firm. He'd take what he needed, nothing more. Pride, still alive despite everything that had tried to kill it. The town, slowly, began to accept his presence. The mercantile owner nodded when Elias wheeled by. The postmaster learned his name. Children stopped staring quite so obviously. He was becoming part of Silver Ben's landscape, the crippled soldier at the laundry house. Not quite pitied, not quite accepted, but at least acknowledged. Some acknowledgement came with hostility. Tom Carson, Sarah's husband, showed up drunk one evening, demanding to know where his wife was. Elias, alone at the laundry, told him she'd gone home hours ago. "You're lying," Tom slurred, swaying in the doorway. "She's here with you. I know it." "She's not, and you need to leave." "Don't tell me what I need, cripple." Tom lurched forward, his hand going to his belt where a knife hung. "Maybe I'll teach you some manners." Elias had faced down Ute warriors and Confederate raiders. A drunk miner didn't rank high on his list of threats. "I'm going to say this once. Turn around and go home. Sleep it off. Come back sober if you want to talk." "Fuck you," Tom charged, clumsy but committed. Elias waited until the man was close, then grabbed one of the laundry's wooden paddles and swung it hard into Tom's knee. The miner went down like a felled tree, howling. Before he could recover, Elias had wheeled forward and planted the paddle against his throat. "I can't walk," Elias said quietly, "but I can still fight. Remember that next time you think about causing trouble." He released the pressure and Tom scrambled away, cursing and limping. Elias knew he'd made an enemy, but some things couldn't be avoided. Clara heard about it the next morning. Silver Ben's gossip network was faster than the telegraph. "Tom's telling everyone you attacked him. He came at me with a knife." "I know. Sarah told me the truth." Clara was folding sheets, her hands working automatically. "He's dangerous when he's drunk, Elias. You should be careful." It was the first time she'd used his first name. Something small shifted between them, like ice beginning to thaw. "I've survived worse than Tom Carson," Elias said. "Maybe, but surviving's not the same as living." She paused in her folding, looking at him directly. "You planning to stay in Silver Bend?" "Haven't planned much beyond the next day. That's not a life. It's the one I've got." Claire's expression softened. "Is it, though? Or is it just the one you've accepted?" Before he could answer, Sarah arrived with news that scattered the moment. "Mrs. Henderson's refusing to pay. Says we shrunk her dining linens." "They're the same size they've always been," Clara protested. "Tell her that. She wants them redone, or she wants her money back." The women dealt with Mrs. Henderson, a wealthy widow with more money than sense, while Elias returned to his books. But Clara's question stayed with him. Was he living or just surviving? And was there even a difference anymore? Ishab. 3 weeks into his stay, winter tightened its grip on Silver Bend. A blizzard swept through, dumping 2 feet of snow and stranding half the town in their homes. The laundry closed for 3 days. Elias and Clara, both living in the building, found themselves snowbound together. The first day, they maintained their professional distance. The second, the stove started acting up, and Elias spent hours taking it apart and fixing a cracked flue. Clara made soup from canned goods in the storage room, and they ate together in comfortable silence. The third day, the walls came down. "Tell me about your wife," Clara said, watching snow fall past the window. "I was never married." "Then who'd you write all those letters for?" Elias looked up, surprised. "You read them?" "I saw you burning them that first day. The handwriting was different from yours. You wrote to someone, they wrote back. When Mrs. Thornton rejected you, you destroyed the correspondence. Doesn't take a detective." He should have felt invaded, but instead felt oddly relieved. "Margaret, 6 months of letters. She made it sound like she wanted a partner, someone to build something with. Turns out she wanted someone whole." "You are whole." "Tell my legs that." Clara turned from the window. "That's not what makes a person whole, Elias. I thought you'd have figured that out by now." "What does then?" "I don't know." She smiled, sad and honest. "But I know it's not about walking." "Easy to say when you can." "You're right. I'm sorry." She returned to her mending. She was fixing a torn shirt, her needle moving with practiced ease. "For what it's worth, Margaret's an idiot. Those letters you wrote. I saw one before you burned it all. You would have been good to her." "Not good enough." "No, better than she deserved." Clara tied off a thread, examining her work. "Can I ask you something? Why did you answer her advertisement? Out of all the towns, all the opportunities, why a mail order situation?" Elias was quiet for a long moment, weighing what to share. Finally, because I was tired of being alone. Because I thought maybe someone looking through letters, someone who'd pick a man based on words instead of appearance, might see past the chair. I was wrong. Not wrong, just unlucky. Clara set down her mending. I was married once. William Dillard, good man, worked the mines. Cave-in took him 2 years ago. Left me with nothing but debts and this town's pity. I know something about being reduced to what people think you are instead of who you actually are. Is that why you're washing other people's clothes? It's honest work. That's not what I asked. Clara met his eyes. It's the only work women can get in Silver Bend if they're not married or teaching school. The other options are worse. They both knew what she meant. Silver Bend had a brothel on the edge of town, where desperate women did desperate things. You could leave, Elias said. Go to Denver, find something better. So could you. Touché. Besides, Clara continued, leaving takes money and courage, and most days I'm short on both. So I wash clothes and tell myself it's temporary, even though I know it probably isn't. The honesty was raw, uncomfortable. Elias recognized it because he carried the same weight. The knowledge that the life you were living might be all you got, and the quiet devastation of accepting that. For what it's worth, he said, you're good at it, the laundry, I mean. You've built something here. So have you. I fixed some books and scared off a drunk. You gave yourself a reason to wake up every morning. That's harder than it sounds. Clara picked up her mending again, her voice going soft. When William died, I spent 6 months doing nothing but crying and staring at walls. Sarah practically dragged me to the laundry work. Some days I still have to drag myself. But I do it, we do it. That's not nothing, Elias. No, he agreed. That's not nothing. The snow kept falling, the stove kept burning, and for a few hours, 2 people who'd learned to expect nothing from the world found something unexpected in each other. Understanding without judgment, company without obligation. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was the foundation love could build on, if given time and care. The blizzard ended and Silver Bend dug itself out. The laundry reopened and life resumed its patterns. But something had shifted between Elias and Clara, subtle but real. Their conversations grew longer, more personal. Clara started joining him for evening meals in the storage room, sharing whatever she'd cooked or brought. They talked about everything and nothing, books they'd read, places they'd seen, dreams they'd given up on, and ones they hadn't. I wanted to be a teacher, Clara admitted one night. Studied for it and everything. But then I met William, and teaching seemed less important than being a wife. After he died, the position was already filled. You could still teach. Who's going to hire a widowed washerwoman with no connections? She shook her head. That dream's done. I've made peace with it. Have you? Clara looked at him, and something vulnerable flickered in her expression. Most days. Why are you asking? Because you talk about it like someone who's still grieving, and because you're smart enough that washing clothes seems like a waste. I could say the same about you keeping books for a laundry instead of doing, I don't know, whatever cavalry scouts become when they're not scouting. Obsolete, Elias said. That's what we become. Is that really what you think? He'd meant it as a joke, but Clara's tone made him reconsider. Sometimes, the cavalry trained me for one thing, ranging, tracking, surviving impossible situations. Those skills don't translate well to town life, and the ones that might, leadership, strategy, decision-making, people see the chair before they see the capabilities. Except me. Except you, he agreed. Clara stood, moving to the window. Outside, Silver Bend was settling into night, lights appearing in windows, smoke rising from chimneys. Can I tell you something? Always. That first day on the platform, I almost didn't help you. I saw you fall, saw everyone ignore you, and I almost kept walking. Not because I'm cruel, but because I was tired and cold and barely keeping my own life together. Helping you meant taking on someone else's burden when I could barely carry mine. What changed your mind? The way you got yourself up. Clara turned back to face him. You didn't wait for help. You didn't give up. You just started dragging yourself toward that chair like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I thought, If he can do that, maybe I can spare 5 minutes to help. She smiled, self-deprecating. Selfish reason, I know. Human reason, Elias corrected. We all need reminders that we're stronger than we think. Is that what you see when you look at me? Strength? The question hung between them, weighted with meanings Elias was only beginning to understand. Clara wasn't just asking about physical capability. She was asking if he saw her, really saw her, past the faded dress and work-raw hands and the labels Silver Bend had given her. Yes, he said simply. Every day. Clara's eyes shone with something that might have been tears, but she blinked them away. Thank you. For what? For seeing me the way I see you. She left then, her goodnight softer than usual, and Elias sat alone with his thoughts. Something was growing between them, careful and slow. Neither of them rushed it. They'd both been burned before, Clara by loss, Elias by rejection. Trust came hard when the world had taught you not to give it. But it was coming nonetheless, patient as spring. March arrived, bringing false promises of warmth. One afternoon, Elias wheeled into town for supplies, navigating the mud-thick streets with difficulty. The thaw had turned Silver Bend into a swamp, and his wheels kept catching in the muck. He'd made it to the Mercantile when he heard raised voices from the alley behind the building. A crowd had gathered, always a bad sign. Elias wheeled closer and saw what had drawn them. Tom Carson had cornered a young Mexican boy, no more than 14, and was berating him in slurred, angry English. Stealing jobs from honest miners, Tom was saying, each word a accusation, should send you back across the border where you belong. The boy, terrified, not understanding, pressed himself against the alley wall. The crowd watched with a mix of entertainment and approval. This was Silver Bend showing its uglier side, the one that saw difference as threat. Tom, Elias called, leave the kid alone. Tom turned, his face flushing when he saw who'd spoken. This doesn't concern you, cripple. It does when you're terrorizing children. He's a thief. Proof? Don't need proof. I know his kind. Elias wheeled forward, positioning himself between Tom and the boy. Then you've got a problem, because your kind doesn't get to decide who belongs here. Tom's hand dropped to his belt, where he still carried that knife. You want to go again, Boone? This time I'm sober. Sober enough to fight a man in a wheelchair? Elias's voice carried to the crowd. That's the kind of courage you're working with? Several people laughed, and Tom's face darkened further. But Elias had calculated correctly. Public humiliation cut deeper than any physical threat. Tom wouldn't attack him here, not with witnesses already laughing at him. This isn't over, Tom spat, but he was backing away. It is for today. Elias turned to the boy, switching to rudimentary Spanish he'd picked up during the cavalry years. Are you hurt? The boy shook his head, still scared but grateful. Elias pointed toward the church at the end of the street. Father Martinez, go there. He'll help you. The boy ran, and the crowd dispersed, muttering about the crippled soldier getting above himself. Elias didn't care. He'd learned long ago that doing the right thing rarely made you popular. Clara heard about it within hours. Tom's spreading rumors that you threatened him. I embarrassed him. In his mind, that's the same thing. He's dangerous, Elias, and he's got friends. So do I. He looked at her meaningfully, and Clara's expression softened. One friend, she corrected, against a dozen drunk miners who think you're getting uppity. Then it's a fair fight. Clara wanted to argue but couldn't help smiling. You're impossible. You keep saying that. Must be why you keep talking to me. Must be. But her concern was valid. Tom Carson wasn't done. Elias knew that. Men like Tom needed someone to blame for their failures, and Elias had made himself a convenient target. The question wasn't if Tom would come for him, but when. The answer came sooner than expected. It was a Saturday night, late, when Elias heard boots on the laundry house porch. 3 men, maybe 4, their steps heavy and purposeful. He'd been reading by lamplight, but now he set the book aside and moved to the door, listening. Boone! Tom's voice, drunk and angry. Get out here! Go home, Tom. Sleep it off. Don't tell me what to do. Something heavy hit the door. Tom's fist, or maybe his shoulder. You made me look bad in front of the whole town. You did that yourself. More pounding. The door was sturdy, but not sturdy enough to hold against multiple drunk men if they really wanted in. Elias looked around the room, assessing his options. He had a rifle, old cavalry Spencer, but shooting Tom would solve nothing and create worse problems. Last chance, Boone. Come out, or we come in. Before Elias could respond, another voice cut through the night. Female, furious, unmistakable. Tom Carson, you touched that door, and I'll brain you with this skillet. Clara. Elias's heart lurched. She shouldn't be here. It was late. She should have been home. But through the window, he could see her standing on the porch in her nightdress and coat, wielding a cast-iron pan like a weapon. This doesn't concern you, Clara, Tom slurred. It does when you're terrorizing people on my property. This is my laundry, Tom. My building. My employee. You want to fight him? You go through me first. Get out of the way. No. The standoff held for a long moment. Elias wanted to throw open the door to protect Clara from whatever came next, but he also knew that would only make things worse. Clara was buying time, using her presence as a shield. Finally, another voice, one of Tom's friends, slightly more sober. Come on, Tom. It's not worth it. We can come back when she's not here. Coward. Practical. She'll have the sheriff here if we don't leave. Tom cursed viciously but backed off. This isn't over, Boone. You hear me? I hear you, Elias called back. I've heard you every time. Repetition doesn't make you braver. More cursing, but the boots were retreating now. Elias waited until the sounds faded, then opened the door. Clara still stood on the porch, skillet in hand, her whole body trembling with adrenaline or fear or both. You shouldn't have done that, Elias said. Probably not. They could have hurt you. They could have hurt you. I can handle myself. So can I. Clara lowered the skillet, but her hands were shaking. Can I come in? I don't want to walk home alone right now. Of course. She stepped inside and Elias closed the door, throwing the bolt. Clara sank onto the cot, still holding the skillet like a talisman. Now that the danger had passed, reaction was setting in. I heard them from my room, she said. I knew they were coming for you, and I couldn't let them. I couldn't just stay in bed and let them. Her voice broke. Elias wheeled close, giving her space but offering presence. Hey, you were amazing. Terrifying, but amazing. I was stupid. I could have gotten us both killed. But you didn't. You stood up to 4 drunk miners with a kitchen implement. That's not stupid. That's brave. Clara laughed, a wet sound halfway to crying. My mother would have called it something else. Your mother wasn't here. I was. And I'm telling you, thank you for standing up for me, for putting yourself between me and them. She looked up at him, her eyes red. Why wouldn't I? She stopped, searching for words. You're important to me. I know we haven't known each other long, but you're important. And the thought of them hurting you. I know, Elias said quietly. I felt the same way when you stepped out there. The admission hung between them, heavy with implications neither was quite ready to name. Clara set down the skillet and wrapped her arms around herself. Can I stay here tonight? She asked. I know it's improper, but I don't want to be alone. You can have the cot. I'll sleep in the chair. Don't be ridiculous. We're both adults. We can share a cot without impropriety. Clara, please. She looked at him, vulnerable and certain at once. I'm not asking for anything but company. I just don't want to be alone tonight. So they shared the narrow cot. Clara curled on her side with her back to the wall, Elias positioned carefully on the outer edge. They didn't touch beyond the inevitable brush of shoulders in the tight space, but they talked, their voices soft in the darkness. Clara told him about William, how they'd met at a church social, how he'd courted her with wildflowers and terrible poetry, how his death had felt like losing her future along with her past. Elias told her about the cavalry, the camaraderie, the danger, the strange beauty of the frontier before civilization tamed it. He told her about the accident, about waking up in that hospital and knowing instantly that everything had changed. Do you miss it? Clara asked. Walking? Every day, Elias admitted. But not the way people think. I don't miss walking itself. I miss what it represented. Freedom. Independence. The ability to go anywhere without calculating whether the terrain is navigable. You're still independent. In ways. But everything takes longer, takes more planning. You can't be spontaneous in a wheelchair. You can, Clara said. Just differently. Maybe. They fell silent, exhaustion finally overtaking them. Just before sleep claimed him, Elias felt Clara's hand find his in the darkness, her fingers intertwining with his own. "Thank you," she whispered, "for letting me stay." "Thank you," he whispered back, "for seeing me." And there, in a storage room behind a laundry house, with danger still lurking in Silver Bend's shadows, two broken people found something whole in each other. Morning came too quickly, filtering through the storage room's single window in shades of gray and gold. Clara woke first, her hand still tangled with Elias's, and for a moment she didn't move, just lay there studying the man beside her. In sleep, the hardness that usually lined his face had softened. He looked younger, less burdened. She wondered if she looked the same to him, or if her own scars showed even in dreams. She extracted her hand carefully, trying not to wake him, but his eyes opened anyway. For a heartbeat, they just looked at each other, the intimacy of shared sleep making words unnecessary. "Morning," he said finally. "Morning." Clara sat up, suddenly aware of her nightdress, her unbrushed hair, the propriety they'd abandoned in the night. "I should go before people start arriving." "Clara, it's fine." She was already standing, pulling her coat tighter. "Thank you for last night, for letting me stay." "You don't have to thank me." "I do, though." She paused at the door, her hand on the knob. "What we talked about, what happened, it stays between us, right?" "Of course." She nodded, satisfied, and slipped out into the dawn. Elias listened to her footsteps fade across the laundry floor, then the distant click of the back door closing. The room felt emptier without her, colder despite the stove's lingering warmth. He transferred to his chair, going through his morning routine with mechanical efficiency. His hands still remembered the feel of Clara's fingers intertwined with his own. The memory was dangerous, a kindling that could catch fire if he let it. He'd learned to be careful with hope. It burned too hot and left nothing but ash. But as he dressed and prepared for the day, he couldn't quite extinguish the warmth that had taken root somewhere behind his ribs. Sarah arrived first, as usual, carrying a basket of mending and yesterday's gossip. "Heard Tom Carson and his boys made trouble last night." "Nothing I couldn't handle." Elias measured his words carefully. Clara's presence last night was nobody's business but theirs. "That's not what I heard." Sarah gave him a knowing look. "I heard Clara Dillard ran them off with a frying pan." "Skillet," Elias corrected automatically, then cursed himself for confirming it. Sarah's smile was equal parts amusement and approval. "Good for her. Tom's needed someone to stand up to him for years, though I should warn you, this will make things worse before they get better." "Story of my life." "I believe it." Sarah started sorting the mending, her hands moving with practiced ease. "You know Clara's sweet on you, right?" Elias nearly dropped the ledger he'd been reaching for. "What?" "Don't play dumb. It's not flattering." Sarah didn't look up from her work. "She talks about you constantly. Elias fixed the books. Elias organized the shelves. Elias scared off those kids. And the way she looks at you when you're not watching. I've seen that look before. You're imagining things." "Am I?" Now Sarah did look up, her expression serious. "Listen, I don't know what your intentions are, and frankly it's none of my business. But Clara's been through enough. If you're not serious, don't let this go any further. She deserves better than another heartbreak." "I would never—" Elias stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. Never what? Never hurt her? He couldn't promise that. Never care for her? Too late for that. "I don't have intentions," he said finally. "We're friends." "Friends don't look at each other the way you two do." Sarah returned to her mending, the subject apparently closed. "Just think about what you want, Elias, before circumstances decide for you." Clara arrived 20 minutes later, her hair neatly braided, her dress a faded green that made her eyes look more gray than blue. She and Elias exchanged careful pleasantries, both hyper-aware of Sarah's presence. The day proceeded with false normalcy, washing, rinsing, wringing, hanging. But underneath the routine, something had shifted. Every accidental touch, every exchanged glance carried weight it hadn't before. Around midday, Father Martinez appeared at the laundry door with the Mexican boy from the alley, the one Elias had defended. The priest, a weathered man in his 60s with kind eyes and hands gnarled by decades of manual labor, nodded respectfully to the women before addressing Elias. "Mr. Boone, Miguel here wanted to thank you for yesterday." The boy stepped forward, his hat clutched in both hands, and spoke in halting English. "Thank you, senor, for helping me. Tom Carson, he say many bad things, but you stop him. Anyone would have done the same." "No, senor." Miguel shook his head firmly. "Many people watch, only you help." Father Martinez placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Miguel's family is new to Silver Bend. They came for mining work, but the Anglo miners make it difficult. Your intervention yesterday meant more than you know. I just told Tom to leave him alone. In this town, that's a radical act." The priest's smile was wry. "I wanted you to know. If you need anything, anything at all, the church stands with you. We don't forget kindness." After they left, Clara approached Elias with the expression he couldn't quite read. "You didn't tell me about that." "Didn't seem important. You stood up to Tom Carson twice in one day, once for a stranger, once for yourself. That's not important?" "The first was just common decency. The second was self-preservation." "Most people don't bother with either." Clara's voice had gone soft. "You're a good man, Elias Boone." "I'm a man who is in the right place at the right time." "No." She touched his arm, brief but deliberate. "You're a good man who keeps doing good things and pretending it's nothing. There's a difference." Before he could respond, Sarah called out that Mrs. Henderson had arrived with more complaints about her linens. Clara rolled her eyes and went to deal with the difficult customer, leaving Elias alone with his thoughts and the ghost of her touch on his arm. The day wore on. The laundry processed what felt like half of Silver Bend's dirty clothes. Elias kept the books, managed supplies, and tried not to think about Clara's words or Sarah's warning or the way everything seemed to be accelerating toward something he couldn't name. Evening brought unexpected visitors, 3 women Elias had seen around town but never spoken to. They introduced themselves as Mrs. Chen, Mrs. Kowalski, and Mrs. Rodriguez, wives of miners who'd heard about the incident with Miguel. "We wanted to thank you," Mrs. Rodriguez said, her English accented but clear, "for standing up for one of ours. Not many Anglos do that. It was the right thing to do." "Maybe." Mrs. Chen, older than the others with silver threading her black hair, studied him with shrewd eyes. "But right things take courage when wrong things are easier. My husband says you're cavalry. You know about courage. I know about doing your job and trying not to die." That made Mrs. Kowalski laugh. Modest, too. "Listen, Mr. Boone, we won't take much of your time. We just wanted you to know our families are grateful. If you need anything, you ask. We take care of people who take care of us." They left a basket of food, fresh bread, dried meat, jarred vegetables, and departed before Elias could properly thank them. Clara, who'd witnessed the exchange, was smiling when she came to examine the basket's contents. "You're collecting quite the coalition," she observed. "The church, the immigrant families, probably half the laundry customers after word spreads." "Coalition for what?" "For whatever comes next." Clara's smile faded. "Tom won't let this go, Elias. Yesterday was escalation. He'll come again, with more people, more anger. Let him come. Don't be stupid." The sharpness in her voice surprised them both. Clara took a breath, moderating her tone. "I'm not saying back down. I'm saying be smart. Tom has friends, resources, a history in this town. You're an outsider in a wheelchair. The math doesn't favor you." "The math never does." Elias closed the ledger he'd been working on, meeting her eyes. "Clara, I've been fighting unfavorable math since the horse crushed my legs. If I only did things where the odds were good, I'd still be rotting in a Denver boarding house. Sometimes you have to stand up even when you can't stand. Especially then. That's not wisdom, that's stubbornness. Sometimes they're the same thing." Clara wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Instead, she sat down across from him, her hands folded on the table between them. "Why?" she asked finally. Why fight for Miguel, for me, for any of this? You don't owe Silverbend anything. No, Elias agreed. But I owe myself something. 3 years ago, that horse accident didn't just take my legs. It took my purpose, my identity, everything I thought made me valuable. I've spent the time since trying to figure out who I am now, what I'm worth. Turns out, I'm worth what I do with what I've got left. And what you've got left is a talent for making powerful enemies? Among other things, he smiled, trying to lighten the moment. I'm also excellent at organizing supply closets and mediocre at folding sheets. You're terrible at folding sheets. See? Self-awareness. That's valuable. Clara laughed despite herself, the tension breaking, but her expression turned serious again quickly. I'm scared for you. I need you to know that. Whatever's building between you and Tom, I'm scared it's going to end badly. It might, Elias admitted. But running never made anything better. I tried that after the accident. Tried to disappear into myself, become small enough that the world would stop hurting me. Didn't work. The world kept hurting. I just got smaller. I won't do that again. Even if it costs you? Especially if it costs me. Because the alternative costs more. Clara looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Then she reached across the table and took his hand. Not the tentative, comfort-seeking touch from last night, but something deliberate and claiming. Then I'm with you, she said simply. Whatever comes, I'm with you. Clara, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Her fingers tightened around his. You stood up for me last night. You stand up for strangers. You're rebuilding yourself piece by piece in a town that wanted to leave you in the snow. If that's not worth standing beside, I don't know what is. Elias felt something crack in his chest, the last of the armor he'd built after Margaret's rejection, after 3 years of learning not to hope. I don't know what to do with that, he said honestly. You don't have to do anything. Just don't push me away. Clara's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I've been alone long enough, Elias. So have you. Maybe we could try being alone together for a while, see how that feels. It feels terrifying. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? I don't know yet. Fair enough. Clara released his hand but didn't pull away. I can work with uncertainty. It's dishonesty I can't stomach. Then I'll always be honest with you, Elias promised, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. They sat there as evening deepened outside, two people beginning to build something fragile and necessary between them. Neither mentioned love. It was too soon, too vulnerable. But what they were building felt real in a way that Margaret's carefully composed letters never had. Real and frightening and worth protecting. Sarah had already left for the day, so it was just the two of them when they heard the commotion outside. Shouting, the sound of breaking glass, running feet. Elias and Clara exchanged glances and moved toward the door together. Silver Bend's main street had transformed into chaos. A crowd had gathered near the Mercantile, where smoke was beginning to rise from a back window. The bucket brigade was forming, men and women running toward the town well with anything that could carry water. And in the middle of it all, Tom Carson was screaming at Miguel's father, accusing him of arson. You trying to burn us out? Tom roared, his face apoplectic. You people come here, take our jobs, now you're burning our businesses? I did nothing, Miguel's father protested in heavily accented English. I just arrived from mine. Liar. Tom shoved the smaller man, who stumbled back into Father Martinez. The priest steadied him, his expression grave. Tom, this isn't helping, Father Martinez said. We need to focus on the fire. Fire he probably started. Elias was already moving toward the scene, Clara hurrying beside him. The bucket brigade was working frantically, but the fire was spreading. The Mercantile's wooden walls were dry from winter, perfect kindling. If they didn't stop it soon, half the street could go up. Where's the fire wagon? Someone shouted. Broke down last month, never got fixed. Of course it hadn't. Silver Bend operated on hope and prayer more than infrastructure. Elias assessed the situation with old cavalry instincts, limited resources, growing threat, people panicking instead of organizing. We need a line, he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos with command authority he hadn't used in years. Bucket brigade from the well to the fire, single line, no gaps, move. Something in his tone made people listen. The scattered crowd began organizing into a proper line, passing buckets with increasing efficiency. But it wasn't enough. The fire was moving faster than they could douse it. "The back room!" someone yelled. "There's ammunition stored in the back room!" That information sent a wave of panic through the crowd. If the fire reached those munitions, the explosion would take out the entire building and possibly others nearby. People started backing away, self-preservation overriding civic duty. "Don't stop," Elias commanded. "We're almost there." But the line was breaking, people deciding their safety mattered more than the mercantile. Elias didn't blame them. He understood the calculation. But he also understood that if this fire spread, the whole town was at risk. Clara grabbed his arm. "Elias, we need to evacuate. If those munitions go, they won't." He was already wheeling toward the building, his chair navigating the muddy street with difficulty. "What are you doing?" "Someone needs to get that ammunition out before the fire reaches it." "You can't. The stairs." "There's a loading door on the ground level. The ammunition's probably stored near there." He didn't mention that probably was doing a lot of work in that sentence. "Keep the bucket line going. I'll be back." "Elias, no!" But he was already at the building, finding the loading door where merchants received freight. It was unlocked. Small mercies. Inside, smoke was thickening, but the fire hadn't reached the ground level yet. It was coming from above, working its way through the ceiling. The ammunition was exactly where he'd guessed, crates stacked near the loading door, convenient for receiving and selling. 4 crates, each probably 50 pounds. Elias had upper body strength most men would envy. You didn't wheel yourself everywhere for 3 years without building muscle. But 50 pounds was still 50 pounds, and 4 crates was a lot to move before the fire reached them. He grabbed the first crate, dragging it onto his lap and wheeling it out the door to safety. Then back for the second. His lungs were burning from smoke, his eyes watering. Above him, the ceiling groaned ominously. 3rd crate. His arms were screaming now, but he'd carried wounded men across killing fields. This was nothing. This was just physics and determination. 4th crate. The ceiling gave way as he cleared the door, flames and debris crashing down exactly where he'd been seconds before. The explosion of falling timber spooked his already screaming muscles, and he nearly lost control of the chair. But he steadied himself, got clear, and deposited the final crate with the others. The crowd had watched the whole thing in stunned silence. Now, as Elias emerged from the smoke-shrouded doorway, they erupted in shocked exclamations. "He got them all out!" "Did you see? He went in there in a chair." "I thought for sure." Clara reached him first, her face a mixture of fury and relief. "You stupid, reckless, impossible!" She couldn't seem to finish the sentence, so she kissed him instead. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was hard, desperate, flavored with smoke and fear, and something that might have been fury, or might have been something else entirely. Elias, surprised, took a moment to respond. Then his hands came up to frame her face, and he kissed her back with equal intensity. When they broke apart, half of Silver Bend was staring at them. Clara's face flushed red, but she didn't step back. If anything, she moved closer, her hand finding his shoulder in a gesture that was clearly possessive. "Don't you ever do that again," she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Can't promise that." "Then I'll make sure I'm there to pull you out when you do." Behind them, the bucket brigade had finally gotten the fire under control. The mercantile was damaged but not destroyed. More importantly, the ammunition was safe, the explosion prevented, and Silver Bend had dodged a catastrophic disaster. Father Martinez approached, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Boone, you're either the bravest man I've ever met or the most foolish." "Probably both, Father." "Probably," the priest smiled. "The town owes you a debt." "The town doesn't owe me anything. I just did what needed doing." But even as he said it, Elias could feel the shift in the crowd's attitude. These were the same people who'd watched him fall on the platform 2 months ago and done nothing. Now they were looking at him differently, with respect, maybe even admiration. The crippled soldier had become something else in their eyes. Tom Carson, notably, was not among those showing respect. He stood at the edge of the crowd, his face twisted with something ugly. When he caught Elias watching him, he spat deliberately into the mud and walked away. "That's going to be a problem," Clara murmured. "Add it to the list." Elias was watching where Tom had gone, calculating. But tonight, we kept people safe. I'll take that victory." The crowd dispersed slowly, people returning to their homes with stories to tell about the fire and the man in the wheelchair who'd prevented disaster. Elias and Clara made their way back to the laundry in companionable silence, both processing what had just happened. "You kissed me," Elias said finally. "I did. In front of the entire town. I'm aware." Clara's voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her nervousness, fidgeting with her shawl. "Are you angry?" "No, just surprised." "I thought you were going to die in there." Clara's voice went tight. "I watched you go into that building, and I thought, this is how I lose him. Before anything even started, and when you came out, I needed you to know." "Know what?" "That you matter, to me. That if you're going to keep doing reckless, heroic, stupid things, you should know someone cares whether you come back." Elias caught her hand, stilling its nervous movement. "I came back. This time. Every time," he promised, knowing even as he said it that it was a promise he might not be able to keep. But it was the promise she needed, and he'd try his damnedest to make it true. They reached the laundry to find Sarah waiting on the porch, her arms crossed, her expression knowing. "Well," she said as they approached, "I guess that answers my question about intentions." "Sarah," Clara started, but the older woman waved her off. "Don't apologize. Half the town saw it, and the other half will hear about it by morning. You two might as well own it." Sarah's expression softened. "For what it's worth, I think you're good for each other. Just be careful. Tom Carson looked like he wanted to murder someone after that fire, and my guess is you're top of his list, Elias." "Noted. I'm serious. He's unstable, and now he's humiliated twice over. Once by you defending Miguel, again by you playing hero while he stood there accusing innocent people." Sarah shook her head. "Watch your back. Both of you." She left them there, and Clara and Elias retreated to the storage room that had become more home than shelter. The evening's events hung between them, too large to process immediately. "Are you okay?" Clara asked, studying him. "Really okay? You breathed in a lot of smoke." "I'm fine. Cavalry lungs." "Is that a real thing?" "Absolutely not," he smiled. "But I am fine. Sore, but fine." Clara sat on the cot, suddenly looking exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the evening was fading, leaving behind weariness. "I wasn't lying, you know, when I said you matter to me. I know. And I wasn't just reacting to fear. I've been—" She paused, searching for words. "William's been gone 2 years. For most of that time, I felt like I was gone too. Just going through motions, existing but not living. Then you showed up, rejected and hurt and still fighting, and something in me woke up. I didn't want it to. It felt like betraying William's memory. But it happened anyway." Elias wheeled closer, giving her space but offering presence. "Loving someone new isn't betraying someone old. It's just proof that you're still alive." "Is that what this is? Love?" "I don't know, maybe. Too early to tell." He considered his next words carefully. "But I know I think about you when you're not around. I know your voice makes hard days easier. I know watching you stand up to Tom with that skillet was one of the proudest moments of my life, which is saying something because I've seen cavalry charges." He smiled. "So, maybe not love yet, but definitely something heading that direction." Clara's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I was terrified to feel this again. After William, I thought that was it. That was my one chance at happiness, and it got taken away. I didn't think I'd get another. Life's strange that way. It takes things, but sometimes it gives them back in different forms. Is that cavalry wisdom? That's just living long enough to notice patterns." Clara laughed, wet and honest. Then she stood, crossing the small space to where Elias sat. She bent down and kissed him again, softer this time, deliberate rather than desperate. When she pulled back, her hand lingered on his cheek. "Stay with me tonight?" she asked. "Not like last night. Like tonight. Like this. Clara, if anyone finds out, I don't care." Her voice was firm. "Let them talk. I've been talked about since William died. Poor widow Clara, so lonely, so desperate. If they're going to talk anyway, let them talk about something real. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. So they lay together on the narrow cot, Clara curled against Elias's side, his arm around her shoulders. They talked until exhaustion claimed them, about childhoods and dreams, about fears and hopes, about the lives they'd imagined and the lives they'd gotten instead. Do you think we could have a future? Clara asked at one point, her voice drowsy. People like us, with our histories and our scars. I think people like us are the only ones who could, Elias answered. We've already survived the worst. Everything else is just details. Clara smiled against his chest. I like that. Just details. Just details, he agreed. They fell asleep like that. Two broken people finding something whole in each other's arms. Outside, Silver Bend settled into night, unaware that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new tests of the fragile thing being built in a storage room behind a laundry house. But tonight, for the first time in years, both Elias and Clara slept without nightmares. Morning arrived with insistent knocking. Elias woke first, disoriented, Clara still sleeping against him. The knocking came again, harder this time. Mr. Boone, you in there? Elias recognized the voice. Sheriff Morrison, Silver Bend's lawman. Clara woke at the sound, her eyes going wide. Get up, Elias whispered urgently. Quick. They disentangled, Clara smoothing her dress, Elias transferring to his chair. By the time he opened the door, they looked reasonably presentable, though anyone with eyes could read what had happened. Sheriff Morrison was a lean man in his 50s, with a face that had seen too much and a reputation for fairness. He took in the scene, Clara clearly having just woken, Elias's rumpled clothes, the single cot, and his expression remained neutral. Mr. Boone, Miss Dillard, we need to talk. About what, Sheriff? Elias kept his voice level. About Tom Carson. He's filed a complaint against you, says you've been threatening him, harassing him, turning the town against him. That's a lie, Clara interjected. Tom's the one causing trouble. I know that, Miss Dillard. Half the town knows that. But Tom's got friends on the town council, and they're making noise. Morrison sighed, looking tired. I don't want trouble, Mr. Boone, but I need you to keep your head down for a while. Let things cool off. And if Tom doesn't let them cool off, then I'll deal with Tom. But right now, you're the easier target. You're new, He gestured vaguely at the wheelchair. You're different. Tom's using that, painting you as a troublemaker. So I should just accept being harassed, Elias's voice went hard. Let Tom do whatever he wants? I'm not saying that. I'm saying pick your battles. Last night you were a hero. Don't undo that by giving Tom ammunition. Morrison glanced at Clara, then back to Elias. And maybe be more discreet about your personal life. Town's already talking, and it's not all friendly. After the sheriff left, Clara and Elias sat in heavy silence. The world, it seemed, was determined to make everything difficult. He's right, Clara said finally. About being discreet. You said you didn't care what people thought. I don't, but I care about what happens to you. If Tom can use our relationship against you. Our relationship, Elias caught on the words. Is that what this is? Clara met his eyes. What do you want it to be? It was the question that mattered, the one they'd been dancing around. Elias thought about Margaret's letters, about answering her advertisement because he was tired of being alone. He thought about Clara standing up to Tom with a skillet, about her hand in his in the darkness, about waking up with her curled against him like she belonged there. I want it to be real, he said simply. Whatever that means, however complicated it gets, I want it to be real. Clara's smile was like sunrise. Then it's real, and we'll figure out the rest as we go. It wasn't a perfect answer. It didn't solve Tom Carson or Silver Bend's gossip or any of the practical problems they faced, but it was honest, and for two people who'd learned to expect nothing, honest was enough. We should get to work, Clara said, standing and straightening her dress. Sarah will be here soon, and God knows we've given her enough to tease us about. Probably. But as Clara moved to leave, Elias caught her hand. Thank you, he said, for last night, for all of this. Thank you for being worth it, she replied, and kissed him once more before heading out to start the day. Elias sat there for a moment longer, letting himself feel something he hadn't felt in years, hope, fragile and fierce, that maybe the life he was building in Silver Bend might actually become the life he wanted to live. The week that followed the mercantile fire walked a knife's edge between celebration and condemnation. Silver Bend couldn't decide what Elias Boone was, hero or troublemaker, savior or threat. The uncertainty made him more dangerous than either label alone. Sarah arrived that morning with her usual basket and an unusual expression, half concern, half amusement. She took one look at Clara's face, then Elias's, and shook her head with a knowing smile. "Well, you two certainly don't believe in doing things halfway," she said, setting down her basket. "The whole town's buzzing about that kiss. Mrs. Henderson called it unseemly. Mrs. Chen called it about time. Father Martinez is pretending he didn't see anything, which means he definitely saw everything." "Let them talk," Clara said, but her hands betrayed her nervousness as she started sorting laundry. "Oh, they're talking, but here's the interesting part. Half of them are on your side. The fire changed things. People saw what Elias did, and it's hard to paint a man as worthless when he just saved half your businesses." Sarah started her own work, her voice casual but her words deliberate. "Of course, Tom Carson's working overtime to change that narrative. Says Elias probably started the fire himself, just to play hero." "That's insane," Clara protested. "Of course it is. But Tom's got people listening. Fear makes folks stupid, and Tom's good at spreading fear." Sarah glanced at Elias. "You should know, there's talk of a town meeting. Council wants to discuss recent disturbances and maintaining public order. That's code for putting you on trial without actually saying it." Elias had expected something like this. In his cavalry days, he'd learned that heroism and persecution were often two sides of the same coin. People didn't know how to handle those who disrupted the comfortable order of things, even when that disruption saved lives. "When's this meeting?" he asked. "Saturday night. 3 days from now." Sarah's expression turned serious. "They'll want you there to defend yourself. Tom will be there with his version of events. It'll get ugly." "Let it get ugly." Elias returned to the ledger he'd been updating. "I'm not running from Tom Carson or anyone else." "Nobody said you should run," Sarah said quietly, "but you should be prepared. Tom's had weeks to spread his version of things. You'll need people speaking for you, vouching for your character." "I'll speak for him," Clara said immediately. "Your word won't count for much, honey. Everyone knows you're sweet on him." Sarah softened the words with a smile. "You'll need others. Father Martinez, maybe. The immigrant families. Anyone who's seen what Elias actually is instead of what Tom says he is." The day proceeded with this new weight hanging over it. Customers came and went, some friendly, others coldly formal. Mrs. Rodriguez stopped by with more food, whispering encouragement to Elias in rapid Spanish. Mr. Chen, Miguel's employer, came to shake Elias's hand and promise his support at the meeting. But others, longtime Silver Bend residents with ties to Tom or the mining establishment, made their disapproval clear through silence and averted eyes. By afternoon, Elias had counted the votes. He had support, but it was fragile, contingent on his continued good behavior and Tom's continued overreach. The balance could tip either way. Clara seemed to read his thoughts. During a quiet moment, she approached his workspace and spoke low enough that Sarah wouldn't hear. "You're calculating odds. Always. And what do they say?" "That this could go very badly very quickly." He met her eyes. "I'm sorry, Clara. I've brought trouble to your door." "Our door," she corrected. "And I'm not sorry. I'd rather have trouble with you than peace without you." The simple declaration did something to Elias's carefully maintained defenses. 3 months ago, he'd been sitting in snow, watching a woman drive away because his wheelchair made him worthless. Now Clara Dillard was claiming him publicly, standing beside him knowing it would cost her. "I don't deserve you yet," he said. "Good thing it's not about deserving." Clara touched his hand briefly, a gesture small enough to escape Sarah's notice but significant enough to matter. "It's about choosing, and I choose this." That night, after the women had gone and Elias was alone with his thoughts, he heard footsteps on the porch, too heavy to be Clara's, too deliberate to be casual. He reached for the Spencer rifle he'd kept propped by the door since Tom's last visit, then called out. "Who's there?" "Father Martinez, may I come in?" Elias lowered the rifle and opened the door. The priest entered, his weathered face grave in the lamplight. He carried a bottle of whiskey and 2 tin cups. "I thought we might talk," Father Martinez said, settling onto the room's single chair without waiting for invitation. "Man to man, without the caller getting in the way. I'm not much of a drinker, Father." "Tonight you are." He poured 2 generous measures and handed one to Elias. "To survival." "To survival," Elias echoed, and drank. The whiskey burned, cheap and harsh, exactly what a frontier priest could afford. Father Martinez took his own drink, then studied Elias with the same shrewdness Elias had seen in 100 commanders assessing their soldiers. "You know this town meeting's a trap." "I figured." "Tom wants you gone, not just quiet, gone. Dead would suit him fine, but run out of town works too." The priest's bluntness was refreshing after a day of careful words. "He's painted you as an outsider, a cripple who doesn't know his place, a troublemaker corrupting decent women. Half of that's nonsense, but the half that's true, the part about not knowing your place, that's what scares people. Because I won't act helpless." "Exactly." Father Martinez poured them both another measure. "Silver Ben's comfortable with charity cases. They understand those. Feed the poor, help the crippled, feel good about their Christian virtue. But a crippled man who saves children and puts out fires and keeps books better than the town accountant, that's threatening. That makes them question their assumptions. So what do I do? Pretend to be helpless so they'll feel better? God, no. You do what you've been doing. Be yourself. Damn the consequences." The priest smiled. "I'm just making sure you understand what those consequences are. The meeting Saturday will be a trial, Elias. Tom will bring witnesses, tell stories, make you out to be everything wrong with modern times. You'll need more than righteousness to survive it." "I'll need people." "You'll need people," Father Martinez agreed, "and I'll be one of them. Miguel's family will be there. The Chens, the Kowalskis, the Rodriguezes, all the families you've helped will speak for you, but you'll also need the old guard, the people who've been here since Silver Ben was founded. Without them, you're just a coalition of outsiders defending another outsider. And how do I get them? Mercantile owner. He owes you his business. You need Mrs. Hutchins from the boarding house. She's been feeding you gossip. Might as well make it official. You need Sarah Carson." "Sarah, Tom's wife?" "Exactly. She's planning to leave him, take the children to Denver. If she speaks against Tom before she goes, if she tells people what he's really like behind closed doors, it'll devastate his credibility." Father Martinez's expression turned sad. "It'll also destroy what's left of her reputation here, but Sarah knows that. She's willing to burn that bridge if it means other people don't have to suffer Tom's cruelty." Elias felt something tighten in his chest. "I can't ask her to do that." "You don't have to. She's already decided." The priest finished his whiskey and stood. "Saturday, Elias. Be ready to fight for everything you've built here. And don't fight alone. That's how good men lose." After Father Martinez left, Elias sat in the darkness, turning the priest's words over in his mind. He'd spent 3 years learning to be alone, to need nothing from anyone. Now he was being told his survival depended on community, on letting others fight for him as he'd fought for them. It felt like weakness. It felt like strength. He couldn't tell which. The next 2 days blurred together in a mix of preparation and dread. Clara and Sarah worked double shifts, trying to get ahead on laundry so they could attend the meeting. Customers came and went, some warmly supportive, others coldly hostile. Elias kept the books, organized supplies, and tried to ignore the knot of anxiety growing in his stomach. On Friday, Sarah pulled him aside while Clara was dealing with Mrs. Henderson's latest complaint. "I want you to know what I'm going to say tomorrow," she said without preamble. "Tom will lie, say I'm bitter, say I'm making things up. So I need you to hear the truth first, from me, before it gets twisted." "Sarah, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. "Tom Carson beats me. Has for years. The bruises are easy to hide under long sleeves, easy to explain away as clumsiness, but they're there. I've got scars from where he broke my arm, where he split my lip, where he—" She stopped, breathed, continued. "He drinks and he hurts me, and he tells me it's my fault, that I provoke him, that I deserve it, that any man would do the same with a wife as worthless as me." Jesus, Sarah. I believed him for a long time. Thought I must be doing something wrong, must be failing as a wife. Then I watched him go after you, after Miguel, after anyone who made him feel small. And I realized it's not about me. It's about him. He's a mean, scared man who hurts people because it's the only way he knows to feel big. Elias reached out, took her hand carefully. I'm sorry for what you've endured, for what you're about to endure tomorrow. Don't be sorry. Be worth it. Sarah squeezed his hand. I'm leaving Silver Bend after the meeting, taking my children and going to my sister's. But before I go, I'm going to tell everyone what Tom really is. Not for revenge, for prevention. So maybe the next woman who catches his eye will know better than to say yes. You're incredibly brave. I'm incredibly tired, Sarah corrected, but maybe they're the same thing. Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth, as if spring had decided to make an early appearance just to mock everyone's tension. The town meeting was set for 7 in the evening, held in the church, the only building large enough to hold everyone who wanted to attend. Clara spent the afternoon helping Elias prepare, pressing his best shirt, trimming his beard, making him presentable. She was nervous, her hands fluttering over tasks that didn't need doing. Stop fussing, Elias said gently. I'm as ready as I'll ever be. You need to look respectable. People judge books by covers, especially when the book's in a wheelchair. Clara. He caught her hands, stilled them. Whatever happens tonight, it'll be fine. We'll be fine. You don't know that. No, he admitted. But I believe it. That has to be enough. They arrived at the church early, Elias wheeling up the ramp that Father Martinez had insisted be built years ago. Inside, the pews were already filling with curious townspeople. Tom Carson sat near the front, surrounded by his mining friends, large men with hard faces who looked ready for violence. On the other side, Miguel's family clustered together, clearly uncomfortable but determined. Clara guided Elias to a pew near the middle, positioning his chair in the aisle. Sarah arrived moments later with her children, sitting beside Clara with an expression that mixed defiance and terror. The room filled quickly. Mrs. Henderson and her society friends claimed the front pews, their faces already set in disapproval. The mercantile owner, Mr. Warren, sat alone near the back, his face bandaged from the fire. Mrs. Hutchins from the boarding house settled near the windows, fanning herself despite the moderate temperature. The town council, 5 men ranging from reasonable to reactionary, took their positions at the altar, transformed for the night into a makeshift court. Council Chairman Davies, a banker who'd made his fortune in railroad speculation, called the meeting to order with 3 sharp raps of his gavel. We're here tonight to discuss recent disturbances in Silver Bend, he announced, his voice carrying easily in the church's acoustics. Events that have disrupted our peace and raised questions about public safety. We'll hear from concerned citizens, examine the facts, and determine appropriate action. It was all very official, very democratic. It was also, as Father Martinez had warned, a trial. Tom Carson spoke first, standing with the careful precision of a man who'd limited his drinking specifically for this performance. His testimony was measured, reasonable, which made it more dangerous than any drunken rant. I'm not here to persecute anyone, Tom began, his voice full of false reasonableness. I'm here because I'm worried about our town, about the kind of people we're welcoming into our community. He paused, letting the words sink in. 3 months ago, a stranger arrived, Elias Boone. Presented himself as a respectable man, but what's happened since? Confrontations, violence, a fire that nearly destroyed the mercantile. The fire wasn't Elias's fault, someone called out. Mrs. Rodriguez, her accent thick with anger. Order, Davies rapped his gavel. Mr. Carson has the floor. Tom nodded, acknowledging the chairman before continuing. I'm not saying Mr. Boone started the fire, but I am saying trouble follows him. He attacked me outside this very laundry, unprovoked. That's a lie! Clara stood, her voice shaking with fury. You came after him, drunk and threatening. Miss Dillard, please sit down, Davies said, though his tone was less harsh than it might have been. Clara sat, but her hand found Elias's, gripping it tight. Around the room, people murmured, some in agreement with Tom, others in disagreement. Tom pressed his advantage. He's turned respectable women against their duties, corrupted them with inappropriate relationships. His gaze swept meaningfully over Clara. He's sided with foreigners against honest American workers. He's created division where there used to be harmony. And why? Because he's bitter, angry at the world for his condition. He wants us all to be as miserable as he is. It was masterful in a horrible way. Tom had taken every act of kindness, every moment of courage, and twisted it into evidence of malice. The wheelchair wasn't mentioned directly. Tom was too smart for that. But it hung over everything, the unspoken message being that Elias's disability had made him dangerous. When Tom sat down, several of his mining friends applauded. Davies had to use his gavel to restore order. "Does anyone wish to speak in Mr. Boone's defense?" Davies asked, his tone suggesting he expected silence. Father Martinez stood immediately. "I do, Chairman Davies." The priest's testimony was everything Tom's hadn't been: honest, direct, unafraid. He spoke about Miguel, about Elias's intervention, about courage in the face of injustice. He spoke about the fire, about watching Elias risk his life to save ammunition that would have destroyed half the street. He spoke about character, about the difference between performing respectability and actually possessing it. "Tom Carson talks about peace," Father Martinez concluded, his voice ringing with conviction. "But what he means is comfort. Comfort for people like him, people who've never had to question their place in the world. Elias Boone threatens that comfort because he refuses to accept the limitations others would place on him. That's not troublemaking, that's courage. And if Silver Bend punishes courage, we deserve every bit of stagnation and decay that follows." The church erupted. Some people applauded, others booed. Davies hammered his gavel until order returned. Mr. Warren spoke next, the mercantile owner, his bandaged face testament to the fire's damage. "Father's right about the ammunition. Elias saved my business, maybe my life. Whatever Tom says about him, that's the truth I saw." Mrs. Chen stood, her English halting but clear. "Mr. Boone helped my family when no one else do. He see us as people, not foreign. We stand with him." One by one, others rose to speak. Mrs. Rodriguez, Mrs. Kowalski, Miguel's father, through Father Martinez's translation. The coalition Father Martinez had predicted was forming, voices overlapping in support. But Tom's supporters spoke too. The mining foreman talked about disruption, about outsiders threatening their way of life. Mrs. Henderson decried the inappropriate relationship between Elias and Clara, calling it scandalous. Each testimony added weight to one side or the other, the scales tipping back and forth. Then Sarah Carson stood. The church went silent. Everyone knew Sarah, knew she was Tom's wife. Her standing to speak against him was unprecedented, shocking. "I have something to say," Sarah began, her voice small but growing stronger with each word. "About my husband, about the man Tom Carson really is." "Sarah, sit down," Tom growled, half rising from his pew. "No." She didn't look at him, kept her eyes on Davies. "I've sat down for 8 years. I've made excuses, hidden bruises, pretended everything was fine. I'm done pretending." The silence deepened, everyone leaning forward. "Tom Carson beats me," Sarah said clearly. "Has for years. Breaks things, breaks me, then tells me it's my fault. That I provoke him, that I deserve it." She rolled up her sleeves, revealing bruises in various stages of healing. "This is what Tom does when he's angry. This is the man calling Elias Boone dangerous." Tom was standing now, his face purple with rage. "You lying bitch! Order!" Davies hammered his gavel, but the church had dissolved into chaos. People were shouting, some at Sarah, some at Tom. The council members argued among themselves, trying to regain control. Sarah kept talking, her voice cutting through the noise. Elias Boone never laid a hand on anyone who didn't deserve it. He stood up to Tom, yes, because Tom was threatening an innocent boy. He confronted Tom again, because Tom came to the laundry drunk and violent. Every act Elias has been accused of has been defensive, protective. While my husband, her voice broke, but she forced herself to continue. My husband hurts people for entertainment. Clara was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Elias felt his own eyes burning. Sarah's testimony was destroying her, laying bare every private shame for public consumption, and she was doing it for him. Tom lunged for Sarah, but several men grabbed him, held him back. He struggled, cursing, but they were stronger. Davies hammered his gavel repeatedly, finally restoring something like order. Mrs. Carson, you've made serious accusations. Not accusations. Facts. Sarah's composure was cracking now, her voice shaking. I'm leaving Silver Bend tomorrow, taking my children somewhere safe. But before I go, everyone needs to know what Tom is. So when he comes after Elias again, and he will, maybe someone will stop him. She sat down abruptly, as if her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Clara reached across the aisle, taking Sarah's hand. The meeting devolved after that. The council tried to ask questions, but the crowd was too stirred up. Tom's supporters were calling Sarah a liar, a hysteric. But Elias could see doubt creeping into faces, people reassessing what they thought they knew. Finally, Davies declared a recess, said the council would deliberate and announce their decision shortly. The crowd spilled into the churchyard, breaking into angry clusters. Elias wheeled outside with Clara and Sarah needing air. I'm sorry, Sarah said to Elias. I know that was hard to watch. Don't apologize. What you did, that took more courage than anything I've done. Did it work? I don't know. Elias glanced back at the church, where the council was still inside. But whatever happens, you told the truth. That matters. They waited in the cool evening air, watching spring stars emerge overhead. Other supporters drifted over, Father Martinez, the immigrant families, Mr. Warren. They formed a loose circle around Elias, wordless solidarity. Inside the church, raised voices suggested heated debate. The wait stretched from minutes to half an hour, tension building with each passing moment. Finally, Davies emerged, his expression unreadable. We're ready to announce our decision. Everyone filed back inside, the church even more crowded than before. Elias positioned himself where he'd been, Clara on one side, Sarah on the other. His hands were steady on his wheels, but his heart hammered. Davies took his position, looking tired. The council has deliberated. Regarding the accusations against Elias Boone, we find no evidence of wrongdoing warranting expulsion from Silver Bend. Relief flooded through Elias, but Davies wasn't finished. However, in the interest of maintaining peace, we strongly encourage Mr. Boone to avoid further confrontations with established residents. A probationary period of 3 months will be observed, during which any additional complaints will be taken seriously. Davies's gaze swept the room. As for Tom Carson, Mrs. Carson's testimony, while disturbing, is a domestic matter beyond this council's jurisdiction. However, we will be monitoring the situation. It was a compromise, satisfying no one but allowing everyone to claim partial victory. Tom hadn't won, but neither had Elias been fully exonerated. The accusations still hung over him, conditional and contingent. But he was still here. He hadn't been run out of town. That was something. The meeting adjourned in a cacophony of opinions. Tom stormed out, his supporters trailing him like an angry comet. Elias's coalition gathered around him, offering congratulations and encouragement. It's not perfect, Father Martinez admitted, but it's survivable. Survivable's all I need, Elias replied. Clara hadn't said anything, just held his hand tight. When the church finally emptied and it was just the two of them in the cooling darkness, she spoke. I was terrified we'd lose you tonight. You didn't. But we could have. And we still might. 3 months probation, Elias. One more complaint and they'll use it as an excuse. Then we'll be careful. Or we could leave. Clara said it quietly, but seriously. We could go to Denver, start over where people don't know us, where you wouldn't have to prove yourself every day. Elias considered it. Denver meant anonymity, freedom from Tom Carson, escape from Silver Bend's judgment. But it also meant running, letting Tom win, abandoning everyone who'd just stood up for him. I can't leave, he said finally. Not now. These people, Father Martinez, Sarah, the immigrant families, they took risks for me tonight. Walking away would make those risks meaningless. Even if staying puts you in danger? Especially then. He turned to face her fully. Clara, I spent 3 years running after my accident, running from the cavalry, from myself, from anyone who might see me as less than whole. I can't do that anymore. Whatever happens here, I have to see it through. Clara's eyes shone in the starlight. Then I'm staying too. Your reputation is already shot to hell, thanks to that kiss and Sarah's testimony. She smiled, sad and determined. Besides, I meant what I said. I choose this. I choose you, in Silver Bend or anywhere else. Elias pulled her close, kissing her with a desperation born of nearly losing everything. Clara kissed him back, her hands framing his face, both of them clinging to what they'd built from nothing. When they broke apart, the church door opened and Father Martinez emerged, carrying a lantern. "Thought you two might need light for the walk home," he said, pretending he hadn't just witnessed their kiss. "Thank you, Father." Clara accepted the lantern, not bothering to pretend embarrassment. They made their way back to the laundry through Silver Bend's quiet streets. Most of the town was still at home, digesting the meeting's revelations. Tomorrow, the gossip would start fresh, the judgments rendered anew. But tonight, walking beside Clara with Father Martinez's blessing literally lighting their way, Elias felt something that might have been hope. The storage room welcomed them back, small and familiar. Clara lit their own lamp, and Father Martinez's lantern was extinguished and set by the door. "I should go," Clara said, but she didn't move toward the door. "You should," Elias agreed, equally motionless. They looked at each other, the evening's intensity still humming between them. Finally, Clara crossed the room and kissed him again, softer this time, but no less significant. "I'm tired of should," she whispered against his lips. "Let's try want instead." "What do you want?" "To stay, to be with you, to stop pretending this isn't exactly what I need." So she stayed, and they lay together on the narrow cot, exhausted from the evening, but too wired to sleep. They talked about the meeting, about Sarah's courage, about Tom's rage. They talked about the future, uncertain, but theirs to shape. 3 months, Clara mused. We have to make it 3 months without Tom causing more trouble. He won't wait 3 months. Tonight humiliated him. He'll come after us sooner. Then we'll be ready. Will we? Elias stared at the ceiling, calculating odds. Tom's got nothing to lose now. His reputation's destroyed, his wife's leaving, the town knows what he is. That makes him more dangerous, not less. Clara propped herself on one elbow, looking down at him. Then it's good you've got people who'll stand with you. I never expected that. People, I mean. After Margaret, after years of being invisible, I didn't think anyone would care. Well, you thought wrong. Clara's fingers traced patterns on his chest, absent and intimate. You made yourself matter, Elias, not through self-pity or demands for accommodation, but by being useful, kind, brave. You gave people reasons to care. I just did what needed doing. Exactly. That's what makes you different. She laid her head on his shoulder, settling in. Most people talk about doing the right thing. You just do it, then act surprised when others notice. Elias wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. Outside, Silver Bend slept, or pretended to. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests. But tonight, they had this. Each other, this room, this fragile beginning. I love you, Clara whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. The words hung in the darkness, terrifying and perfect. Elias's first instinct was to deflect, to make a joke, to protect himself from the vulnerability of reciprocation. But he'd promised Clara honesty, especially when uncomfortable. I love you too, he whispered back. I didn't plan to, didn't think I could, but I do. Clara's breath hitched, and he realized she was crying, not sad tears, but relief. She'd taken the risk of saying it first, exposed herself completely, and he'd caught her. They fell asleep like that, two people who'd survived too much finding safety in each other. And in the darkness of a storage room behind a laundry house, love, imperfect and complicated and absolutely real, took root and began to grow. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that made everything feel both more real and more fragile. Elias woke to find Clara already dressed, standing by the window watching the sunrise paint Silver Bend in shades of gold and rose. You're up early, he said, his voice rough with sleep. Couldn't sleep. She didn't turn from the window. Keep thinking about Tom, about what comes next. We'll handle it. Will we? Now she did turn, and Elias saw the fear she'd been hiding. Last night we won by the narrowest margin. If Tom does anything at all, the council will use it as an excuse. and Sarah's leaving today. We lose our most credible witness. Elias transferred to his chair, rolling to join her at the window. Silver Bend looked peaceful in the early light, but they both knew the peace was deceptive. Somewhere in this town, Tom Carson was waking up with rage and humiliation churning in his gut. Sarah did what she needed to do, Elias said, getting herself and her children to safety. That's the priority. We'll manage without her testimony. How? Same way we've been managing, one day at a time, doing what's right, building support. He reached for Clara's hand. We've got Father Martinez, the immigrant families, half the laundry's customers. That's not nothing. It's also not enough if Tom decides to get violent. She was right, and they both knew it. The town meeting had been civilized, barely, but civility was a thin veneer over Silver Bend's rougher nature. Out here on the frontier, justice was often more about power than principle. They heard footsteps on the porch, familiar ones. Sarah appeared at the door, looking exhausted but determined. Behind her, her two children waited with packed bags. I came to say goodbye, Sarah said simply. Clara crossed the room and embraced her, both women holding each other tight. Elias watched, feeling the weight of what Sarah was sacrificing. She'd stood up at that meeting knowing it would cost her everything. Her home, her place in Silver Bend, the life she'd built here. Thank you, Elias said when Clara released her, for what you did, for what it cost you. Don't thank me. Just make it worth it. Sarah's smile was tired but genuine. Build something good here. Show everyone that courage matters more than conformity. We'll try. Don't try. Do. Sarah glanced back at her children, then at Clara. Take care of him, and let him take care of you. That's how it works. Both people strong, both people vulnerable. I will, Clara promised. Sarah hugged them both one more time, then gathered her children and left. They watched from the window as she climbed into the stage that would take her to Denver, watched the coach pull away carrying someone who'd become more than just a coworker. I hope she finds peace, Clara said softly. She will. People like Sarah always do. They survive. The day unfolded with strange normalcy. It was Sunday, so the laundry was closed, but Clara and Elias used the time to organize supplies and prepare for the week ahead. The work was meditative, familiar, a way to impose order on uncertainty. Around noon, Father Martinez appeared with a basket of food. Sunday dinner, he explained, enough for two. He sat with them for an hour, sharing news and strategy in equal measure. Tom didn't show at Mass this morning, the priest reported. Neither did most of his mining friends. They're either sleeping off hangovers or planning something. My guess is the latter. What kind of something? Clara asked. Hard to say. Tom's impulsive when he's drunk, methodical when he's sober and angry. Last night put him in the second category. Father Martinez sipped the coffee Clara had made. I've asked some of the men to keep watch, make sure Tom doesn't try anything stupid, but I can't guarantee there'll be enough. I can defend myself, Elias said. I know you can, but defending yourself gives Tom exactly what he wants, proof that you're dangerous. You need to be smarter than he is. The priest's expression was serious. For the next 3 months, you need to be beyond reproach. No confrontations, no matter how justified. Tom will try to provoke you. Don't give him the satisfaction. So I should just let him harass us? No. You should document it, report it to Sheriff Morrison, and build a case. The council gave you 3 months to prove you're not a troublemaker. Use that time to prove Tom is. It was sound advice, strategic and practical. But it also meant enduring whatever Tom threw at them, absorbing abuse without retaliation. Elias had never been good at that kind of patience. Clara seemed to read his thoughts. We can do this, she said. 3 months. We've survived worse. After Father Martinez left, they spent the afternoon in quiet domesticity. Clara mended clothes while Elias read from a book of Whitman poetry he'd found in the storage room, probably left by a previous occupant. The words felt appropriate for their situation, all that celebration of the self, the soul, the democratic spirit. Listen to this, Elias said, finding a passage. I am large. I contain multitudes. You think Whitman was in a wheelchair? Clara laughed. I doubt it. Why? Because that's what it feels like sometimes. Being more than people think you are, containing more than they can see. He closed the book. Everyone looks at this chair and thinks they know everything about me. But they don't know anything that matters. I know things that matter. Do you? I know you're brave and kind and stubborn as hell. I know you make me want to be braver myself. I know you see me, really see me, in a way no one has since William died. Clara set down her mending. I know you're more than this chair, Elias. You're the man who saved that ammunition, who defended Miguel, who keeps making me believe good things are still possible. Elias felt his throat tighten. I don't deserve that faith. Stop saying that. You deserve exactly what you've earned, which is considerable. She crossed to him, taking his hands. Can I tell you something? I was so angry at you when you went into that burning building. Furious. Because I thought, here's another person I care about, throwing himself into danger, leaving me behind. But then I realized that's who you are. You see something that needs doing and you do it, regardless of cost. That's not recklessness. That's integrity. It feels like recklessness sometimes. Maybe. But it's also what makes you extraordinary. They spent the rest of Sunday in that small room, talking and reading and simply being together. It was the kind of ordinary intimacy that felt revolutionary to people who'd been alone too long. No grand gestures, no dramatic declarations, just two people sharing space and finding it enough. Monday brought the return of routine and the first test of Father Martinez's strategy. Elias and Clara were organizing the morning's laundry when Tom appeared at the door, sober and coldly furious. Need to talk to you, Boone, Tom said without preamble. I don't think we have anything to discuss, Elias replied, keeping his voice level. I think we do. Tom stepped inside, his presence filling the room with threat. You got my wife to lie about me. Destroyed my reputation. Now she's gone and I got nothing. Sarah told the truth. What you have or don't have is your own doing. That's what you think? Tom moved closer, and Elias could smell the soap on him. He'd cleaned up, made himself presentable, all the more dangerous for being sober. I think you came to this town looking for trouble, found yourself a desperate widow woman, turned her against decent folk, made yourself into some kind of hero. But I see through it. What do you see, Tom? A cripple who can't accept what he is. Who has to tear other men down to feel big. Tom's voice was venomous. You think that chair makes you special, makes you brave? All it makes you is pathetic. Clara had moved closer, ready to intervene, but Elias caught her eye and shook his head slightly. This was exactly what Father Martinez had warned about, Tom trying to provoke a response he could use against them. If that's all you came to say, you can leave now, Elias said calmly. I'm not done. You got 3 months probation, but I got patience. I can wait. And when you slip up, and you will, I'll be there to make sure everyone knows it. Tom smiled, cruel and certain. Enjoy your time with the washerwoman, Boone. It won't last. He left, and the room felt cleaner without him. Clara rushed to the door, throwing the bolt. That was a threat, she said, her voice shaking. We should tell Sheriff Morrison. Tell him what? Tom came by, said some unpleasant things, then left. That's not illegal. Elias was already pulling out the ledger they'd started using to document interactions with Tom. But we write it down. Date, time, what was said, who witnessed it. We build our case. This is insane. We shouldn't have to live like this. No, we shouldn't, but we do. Elias finished his notes, dating and signing them. 3 months, Clara. We can endure 3 months of Tom's posturing if it means we get to stay. The week proceeded in that vein, Tom or his friends appearing regularly, always just staying within the bounds of legality, always pushing to provoke a response. Elias documented everything, noting dates and times with military precision. Sheriff Morrison, when approached, promised to keep an eye on things, but made it clear his hands were tied without actual law-breaking. By Friday, the strain was showing. Clara's sleep was troubled, Elias's patience wearing thin. They'd made it almost a week without incident, but the pressure was building. That evening, as they were closing up, Miguel appeared at the door with his father. Both looked worried. Mr. Boone, we have problem, Miguel's father said in halting English. Tom Carson, he tell Mr. Chen to fire Miguel. Say if he don't, miners will make trouble for his business. Can Mr. Chen refuse? Clara asked. He try, but miners are many. They threaten to break equipment, hurt workers. Mr. Chen, he scared. He tell Miguel not to come Monday. Elias felt rage building in his chest. Tom couldn't attack him directly, so he was going after the people Elias had defended. It was strategic and cruel, exactly Tom's style. We'll figure something out, Elias promised. After Miguel and his father left, Clara turned to Elias with frustration written across her face. He's doing this on purpose, hurting innocent people to get at you. I know. So what do? We find Miguel other work, and we document this too. Tom using intimidation to punish a child for my actions. It's one more piece of evidence. Evidence for what? A council that already doesn't want to act? A sheriff who's too scared of the mining contingent to enforce the law? Clara's voice rose with anger. We're building a case that no one will prosecute. Maybe, but it's all we've got. They spent Saturday trying to find work for Miguel, approaching various businesses with limited success. Most were too afraid of Tom's retaliation to help. Finally, Mr. Warren at the Mercantile agreed to take Miguel on, partly out of gratitude for Elias saving his business, partly because the fire had left him short-staffed. This won't make Tom happy, Warren warned. He'll come after me next. Probably, Elias admitted, but we'll document it. Everything he does, every threat, every act of intimidation. Eventually, there will be enough evidence that even the council can't ignore. Or Tom will get bored and move on to easier targets, Warren said doubtfully. That night, lying beside Clara in their usual tangle of limbs and shared warmth, Elias voiced the fear he'd been carrying. What if Father Martinez is wrong? What if being smart and strategic isn't enough? Then we'll try something else. Clara's hand found his in the darkness. But we don't give up. We can't. Even if it costs us everything? Especially then, because everything is only worth having if we earn it honestly. She shifted closer, her breath warm against his neck. I'm not leaving you, Elias. Not for Tom Carson, not for the council, not for anything. You're stuck with me. Good, he whispered. I wouldn't want to be stuck with anyone else. Sunday brought an unexpected development. Father Martinez arrived at the laundry with news that rearranged everything. The council's calling another meeting, he announced without preamble. Wednesday night, Tom's filed a formal complaint about harassment. Harassment? Clara's voice was incredulous. He's the one harassing us. I know, but he's claiming Elias has been spreading lies about him, turning the community against him, making it impossible for him to work or live peacefully. Father Martinez's expression was grim. He's got witnesses, his mining friends, who'll testify that Elias threatened him, that you two have been conducting a campaign of defamation. That's all lies, Elias said. Of course it is. But Tom's framing this as defensive action. He's saying you've been persecuting him since the first town meeting, that you're using your status as a hero to destroy his reputation. So what do? We present our documentation. Every instance of Tom coming here, every threat, every act of intimidation against Miguel and others. We show the council who's really harassing whom. Father Martinez pulled out a sheaf of papers. I've been gathering statements from people Tom's threatened. The Chens, the Rodriguezes, Miguel's family. They're willing to testify if the council will hear them. Will they? Clara asked. That's the question. The council's under pressure from the mining faction to resolve this quickly. Tom's painting himself as a victim of outside agitators disrupting Silver Bend's harmony. It's effective messaging. Elias studied the papers Father Martinez had brought, recognizing the strategy immediately. Tom was using the council's own logic against them, claiming the outsider was the problem, that removing Elias would restore peace. It was brilliant in its simplicity. We need to flip the narrative, Elias said slowly, the beginnings of a plan forming. Stop defending myself and start showing what Tom actually represents. What do you mean? Tom's arguing I'm a disruptive outsider, but what's he? A violent drunk who beats his wife, terrorizes immigrants, threatens children. He's everything wrong with the old Silver Bend, the town that would rather maintain comfortable corruption than grow into something better. Elias's voice gained strength as the idea crystallized. We don't just defend me. We put Tom on trial. Show the council they're not choosing between me and peace. They're choosing between progress and stagnation. Father Martinez smiled slowly. That's ambitious. It's necessary. If I just defend myself, I'm playing Tom's game, but if I make this about Silver Bend's future, about what kind of town it wants to be, that's different. It's also risky, Clara pointed out. You're essentially challenging the entire power structure. The power structure that almost ran me out of town 2 weeks ago, I'm not exactly in their good graces anyway. Elias looked at Father Martinez. Can you get more people to speak? Not just about Tom, but about Silver Bend itself? About wanting a town where everyone's valued, not just the old guard. I can try. But Elias, you need to understand, if you lose this gambit, you won't just lose your probation, you'll lose everything. The council will make an example of you. Then I better not lose. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Father Martinez gathered testimonies while Elias and Clara organized their documentation into a coherent narrative. They worked late into each night, Clara helping him draft a speech that would reframe the entire conflict. You need to acknowledge Tom's pain, Clara said during one late session. Not excuse it, but recognize he's also a victim of expectations, of a system that told him violence was acceptable, of a town that looked the other way. I can't defend him. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to show empathy, because that's what separates you from him. You see people's humanity even when they're hurting you. It was good advice, hard to swallow, but necessary. Elias revised his speech, adding nuance where there had been only accusation. Tuesday night, unable to sleep, Elias wheeled outside and found Clara already there, sitting on the laundry's back step watching stars. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. Too much thinking. She made room for him, and he positioned his chair beside her. I keep imagining tomorrow, all the ways it could go wrong. Me too. Are we insane, challenging the whole town like this? Probably. Elias took her hand. But I'd rather be insane with you than sane without you. Clara laughed, the sound breaking the tension. That's the worst romantic sentiment I've ever heard. I'm a soldier, not a poet. You're my soldier. She squeezed his hand. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud of you. Of us. We didn't back down, didn't run. That counts for something. It counts for everything. They sat there until the cold drove them inside, taking comfort in each other's presence. Tomorrow would bring the fight, but tonight they had this: peace, partnership, love. Wednesday arrived with clouds promising rain, appropriate weather for what was coming. Elias dressed carefully, Clara helping him with buttons. His nervous fingers fumbled. His speech was memorized, but he carried a copy anyway, insurance against nerves stealing his words. You look handsome, Clara said, straightening his collar one last time. I look terrified. That too, but mostly handsome. She kissed him, soft and lingering. I believe in you. Even when I don't believe in myself? Especially then. That's what love is, believing in someone when they can't. They arrived at the church early, finding it already filling with people. The crowd was larger than the first meeting, drawn by curiosity and drama. Tom sat in his usual spot, surrounded by supporters who radiated hostile energy. On the other side, Father Martinez had gathered their coalition: immigrants, merchants, families who'd benefited from Elias's help. The council took their positions, Chairman Davies looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. He called the meeting to order with less ceremony than before. We're here to address Tom Carson's formal complaint of harassment against Elias Boone, Davies announced. Mr. Carson, you have the floor. Tom stood, his testimony polished by rehearsal. He spoke about constant persecution, about Elias spreading lies, about feeling unsafe in his own town. His mining friends backed him up with stories that were technically true, but stripped of context. Yes, Elias had confronted Tom, but omitted why. Yes, people avoided Tom now, but ignored his own role in that isolation. It was effective. Elias could see council members nodding, already forming opinions. The narrative was simple. Outsider disrupts town, must be removed to restore peace. Then it was Elias's turn. He wheeled to the front, positioning himself where everyone could see. His hands wanted to shake, but he forced them still. Chairman Davies, council members, people of Silver Bend, he began, his voice carrying clearly. Tom Carson is right about one thing. I am an outsider. I arrived 3 months ago with nothing but a wheelchair and hope. This town could have ignored me, rejected me, driven me off. For a while it looked like it would. He paused, letting that sink in. But something else happened. People like Father Martinez and Clara Dillard saw past the chair and recognized someone trying to contribute. The immigrant families saw someone willing to stand up when others stayed silent. Merchants like Mr. Warren saw someone willing to risk his life to protect this community. And slowly, painfully, I stopped being an outsider and started being part of Silver Bend. Movement in the crowd, people leaning forward. Tom Carson hates that. Not because I've done anything to him, but because my presence challenges his authority. In the old Silver Bend, the town Tom wants to preserve, men like him could terrorize immigrants, abuse their wives, and face no consequences. Power protected power, and everyone else just endured. Tom started to stand, but Davies waved him down. Elias continued, gaining momentum. I'm not here to attack Tom. He's as much a victim of that old system as anyone, taught that violence was acceptable, that might made right, that admitting vulnerability was weakness. He learned those lessons well. Too well. Elias's voice softened. But that doesn't excuse what he's done. Sarah Carson bore the physical scars of those lessons. Miguel bore the fear. Every immigrant family in this room has felt the weight of Tom's conviction that they don't belong. He pulled out his documentation, holding it up. Tom claims I've harassed him. Here's the truth. Every interaction documented, dated, witnessed. Tom coming to the laundry to threaten me. Tom forcing Mr. Chen to fire Miguel. Tom telling merchants not to serve me. Not harassment of Tom, but harassment by Tom. Father Martinez stood, adding his testimony and the others he'd collected. The Chens spoke about threats, the Rodriguezes about intimidation, Miguel's father about fear for his son's safety. One by one, Tom's victims found their voices. The crowd's mood was shifting. Elias could feel it. People were seeing Tom differently, seeing Silver Bend differently. This meeting isn't really about Tom Carson or Elias Boone, Elias concluded, returning to his central point. It's about what Silver Bend wants to be. A town that protects bullies or one that protects the vulnerable? A place where your value is determined by when you arrived or by what you contribute? A community that fears change or embraces growth? He met Davies's eyes, then looked at each council member in turn. I'm asking you to choose the future, not because I'm special, but because that's what towns do if they want to survive. They adapt, they include, they become better versions of themselves. He paused. I love Silver Bend. It gave me a home when I had nothing. It gave me Clara. It gave me purpose. I want to help it become everything it could be, but I can only do that if you choose to let the old Silver Bend die and something better be born. He wheeled back to his seat in absolute silence. Clara's hand found his, squeezing tight. Around the room, people were looking at each other, at the council, at Tom, seeing everything with new eyes. Davies cleared his throat. Does anyone else wish to speak, Mrs.? Henderson stood, surprising everyone. I haven't always approved of Mr. Boone. I found his relationship with Miss Dillard unseemly, his confrontations with Tom distasteful. But he's right about one thing. Silver Bend needs to decide what it is. And I'd rather live in a town that values courage over comfort. Others spoke. Some supporting Elias, others defending Tom, the debate growing heated. But the tenor had changed. Elias had shifted the question from, is Elias troublesome, to, what do we want to be? Finally, Davies called for order. The council will deliberate. The wait was longer this time, over an hour of tense silence. When the council returned, Davies looked grim but resolved. We've reached a decision. Tom Carson's complaint is dismissed. Furthermore, Mr. Carson is hereby placed under official warning. Any further acts of intimidation or violence will result in legal action. Davies turned to Elias. Your probation is lifted. The council recognizes your contributions to Silver Bend and welcomes you as a full member of this community. The room erupted. Elias's supporters cheered, Tom's followers protested. But it was done. He'd won. Tom stormed out, his remaining friends following, but Elias barely noticed, too overwhelmed by people pressing forward to congratulate him. Father Martinez embraced him, tears in the old priest's eyes. Mrs. Chen brought her whole family to shake his hand. Even Mrs. Henderson offered grudging respect. Through it all, Clara stayed beside him, her pride evident in every expression. When the crowd finally thinned, she leaned down and whispered in his ear, "You magnificent bastard, you actually did it." "We did it," he corrected. "No, this was you. Your words, your courage, your vision." She kissed his cheek, not caring who saw. "I've never been more proud of anyone." They walked home through Silver Bend's streets, and for the first time Elias felt like he truly belonged. People called greetings from windows. Father Martinez walked beside them, sharing plans for the town's future. Miguel ran up to say Mr. Chen had rehired him. Back at the laundry, alone finally, Clara and Elias collapsed onto the cot in exhausted triumph. "I can't believe that worked," Elias said. "I can. You gave them permission to be better than they were. That's powerful." Clara traced his jawline with her finger. "What happens now?" "Now we live. Build the life we've been fighting for. Get married, maybe, if you'll have me." Clara's breath caught. "Is that a proposal?" "It's a question. I'm fresh out of eloquence for today." "Then yes. Absolutely yes." She kissed him, and it tasted like promise, like future, like everything they'd fought for made real. Outside, rain finally began to fall, washing Silver Bend clean. The rain continued through the night, a steady drumming that seemed to wash away more than just dust from Silver Bend's streets. Clara fell asleep with her head on Elias's chest, his proposal still humming between them like something alive and electric. He lay awake longer, listening to the rain and her breathing, trying to process the enormity of what had happened. He'd won. Not just survived, not just endured, actually won. The council had chosen the future over the past, had chosen him over Tom Carson's vision of Silver Bend. It felt impossible, miraculous, terrifying in its completeness. But as he drifted towards sleep, one thought kept circling back. Tom had left that church with murder in his eyes. Men like Tom didn't accept defeat gracefully. They festered, plotted, waited for the perfect moment to strike back. Morning arrived with continued rain and an unexpected visitor. Sheriff Morrison appeared at the laundry door just after dawn, his expression grave. "Mr. Boone, Miss Dillard, we need to talk." Clara wrapped her shawl tighter, suddenly awake and alert. "What's happened?" "Tom Carson's gone. Left town sometime during the night. Took what he could carry." Morrison removed his hat, rain dripping from the brim. "Thought you should know. Also thought you should know he was making threats before he left. Told his mining friends he wasn't done with you, that he'd be back to settle accounts." Elias felt the victory from last night curdle slightly. "So this isn't over." "Might not be. Or Tom might just keep riding and never come back. Men like him are all talk until they actually have to face consequences." Morrison's expression suggested he didn't believe his own optimism. "Either way, I wanted you warned. Keep your guard up, at least for a while." After the sheriff left, Clara and Elias sat in heavy silence. The rain had stopped, leaving everything dripping and gray. "We should be relieved he's gone," Clara said finally. "But we're not." "No, because he could come back any time. We'll spend months, maybe years, looking over our shoulders." She turned to him, frustration and fear mixing in her expression. "This is what winning looks like?" "Sometimes." Elias pulled her close, feeling her tension. "But Clara, listen to me. Tom being gone is better than Tom being here, regardless of what he might do later. We can't live in fear of possibilities. We have to live in the reality we've got. And what's that reality? That we're free. That Silver Bend chose us. That we can start actually building instead of just surviving." He tilted her face up to meet his eyes. "That you said yes when I asked you to marry me." Clara's expression softened despite everything. "I did, didn't I? Unless you want to reconsider in the cold light of morning." "Not a chance." She kissed him, soft and certain. "Though I should warn you, I'm a terrible cook. I snore and I have opinions about everything. I can't walk. I'm too stubborn for my own good, and I have a talent for making powerful enemies. Sounds like we're perfectly matched." They spent the morning working, returning to the routines that had sustained them through the worst weeks. But everything felt different now, lighter, more possible. Customers who came by congratulated them on the previous night's meeting. Mrs. Chen brought congratulatory dumplings. Father Martinez stopped in to discuss wedding plans with an enthusiasm that made Clara laugh and Elias blush. I'm thinking a simple ceremony, the priest said, unless you want something elaborate. Simple is perfect, Clara confirmed. Just us. People we care about. Nothing fancy. When? Elias and Clara looked at each other, a whole conversation happening in that glance. Soon, Elias said. No reason to wait. Next Sunday, then? Father Martinez suggested. Gives us a week to prepare. Spread the word. Next Sunday, Clara agreed, and suddenly it was real. Not just a possibility, but an approaching fact. After Father Martinez left, Clara stood at the window looking out at Silver Bend, her expression distant. What are you thinking? Elias asked. That a year ago I couldn't have imagined this? Being happy again, choosing to build something new instead of just mourning what I lost. She glanced back at him. William was a good man. I loved him completely. But he's gone, and you're here, and somehow that doesn't feel like betrayal anymore. It just feels like life. He'd want you to be happy. I think so. I hope so. She returned to where Elias sat, taking his hands. I used to think there was only one great love per lifetime, that finding William meant I'd used up my quota, but maybe that's wrong. Maybe we get as many loves as we have courage to reach for. That's a good way to think about it. It's the only way that lets me have this without guilt. She squeezed his hands. So yes, let's get married next Sunday. Let's build a life together. Let's prove that broken people can make whole things. The week that followed was a blur of preparation and anticipation. Clara continued working at the laundry, but now customers brought gifts, fabric for a wedding dress, dishes for their household, advice about marriage both solicited and otherwise. Elias found himself the recipient of knowing looks and backslaps from men who suddenly treated him as one of their own. Marriage changes how people see you, Father Martinez observed during one of his many visits. Suddenly, you're not just an individual, you're a pillar of community, someone invested in Silver Bend's future. I was already invested. You were, but now it's official, recognized. That matters more than you'd think. Miguel appeared one afternoon with his father, both dressed in their Sunday best despite it being Thursday. They'd brought a gift, a hand-carved wooden box, beautiful in its simplicity. For the wedding, Miguel explained in his improving English. My father make it, for you and Miss Clara. Elias accepted the box, moved by the gesture. It's beautiful, thank you. You saved me from Tom Carson, Miguel said seriously. You give my family chance in Silver Bend. This is small thing, but we want you to know, we no forget. After they left, Elias sat holding the box, overwhelmed by the weight of what he'd somehow built. 3 months ago, he'd been rejected and alone, left in the snow like something worthless. Now, he had a community, a purpose, a woman who'd chosen him despite everything. Clara found him like that, tears tracking down his face. What's wrong? She asked, alarmed. Nothing. Everything. I don't know. He held up the box. Miguel and his father brought this, and I can't believe this is my life now. Clara knelt beside his chair, wiping his tears with her thumbs. Believe it. You earned every bit of this. Did I, or did I just get lucky? Both. You got lucky that I found you that day on the platform, but you earned everything that came after, through courage and decency and refusing to accept what others said you were. She kissed him softly. Now pull yourself together. We're getting married in 3 days, and I need you functional. Saturday arrived with unexpected complications. Mrs. Henderson appeared at the laundry with a proposition that took them both by surprise. I want to host your wedding dinner, she announced without preamble. Clara blinked. I'm sorry, what? The dinner after the ceremony. I have the largest dining room in Silver Bend, and it seems appropriate. Mrs. Henderson's expression was unreadable. I haven't always approved of you two. I thought Mr. Boone was disruptive, your relationship improper. But I was wrong. What you've both done, standing up to Tom Carson, forcing this town to be better, that takes courage. I want to honor that. Mrs. Henderson, that's incredibly generous, Elias said carefully. But we were planning something simple. I know. And you can still have simple, just simple, in a nice setting with good food. She softened slightly. Please, let me do this. I'm not good at apologies, but I'm excellent at hosting dinners. Clara looked at Elias, who shrugged. We'd be honored, Clara said. After Mrs. Henderson left in a flurry of planning excitement, Clara turned to Elias with wonder. Did that really just happen? I think so, though I'm not entirely sure what just happened. Acceptance happened, real acceptance, not just tolerance. Clara's smile was brilliant. We're not outsiders anymore, Elias. We're part of Silver Bend. Sunday morning dawned clear and warm, spring finally asserting itself after months of winter's grip. Clara had spent Saturday night with Mrs. Rodriguez, observing the tradition of not seeing the groom before the wedding. Elias woke alone in the storage room, nervous energy making sleep impossible. Father Martinez arrived early, helping him dress in the new suit that had somehow appeared, a gift from the merchant, Mr. Warren, payment for saving his store. How are you feeling? The priest asked as he helped with Elias's collar. Terrified. Excited. Like I might throw up. That's how everyone feels on their wedding day. It's normal. Father Martinez stepped back, assessing. You look good. Happy. I am happy. Also terrified. Also normal. The priest's expression turned serious. Can I give you some advice? Unsolicited and probably unwelcome. Always. Marriage is hard, harder than war, harder than survival, harder than anything you've faced, because it requires constant vulnerability, constant choosing each other even when it's uncomfortable. Father Martinez's eyes held decades of wisdom from counseling countless couples. You and Clara have both been hurt badly. You'll carry those scars into this marriage. The trick is not letting those old wounds infect the new relationship. How do we do that? Honesty, communication, forgiveness, all the boring virtues that sound easy but are agonizing in practice. He smiled. But you two have something most couples don't. You've already been tested. You faced down Tom Carson, the town council, all of Silver Bend's judgment. If you can survive that, you can survive anything marriage throws at you. The ceremony was set for 10 o'clock. Elias wheeled to the church early, finding it already decorated with wildflowers that Miguel's family had gathered. People were arriving in their Sunday best, filling the pews with friendly faces. Then Clara appeared at the back of the church, and Elias forgot how to breathe. She wore a simple dress of blue cotton, not white, acknowledging her status as a widow. But she'd somehow transformed it into something beautiful. Her hair was loose, flowing over her shoulders in waves she usually kept pinned up. She carried a bouquet of the same wildflowers that decorated the church. She was the most beautiful thing Elias had ever seen. Father Martinez began the ceremony, his voice warm and official. The words washed over Elias: love, honor, cherish, all the traditional promises. But when it came time for vows, Father Martinez paused. Elias and Clara have asked to speak their own promises, he announced. Elias hadn't known they were doing this. Clara must have arranged it. She went first, her voice steady despite the tears shining in her eyes. Elias Boone, 3 months ago you fell on a train platform, and I almost didn't stop to help. I was tired, broken, barely surviving my own grief. But something made me turn back. Maybe it was God, maybe it was fate, maybe it was just luck. Whatever it was, I'm grateful. She paused, gathering herself. You've shown me that broken things can be beautiful, that courage doesn't require legs, that love can come twice in a lifetime if you're brave enough to reach for it. I promise to stand beside you, to fight for us, to choose you every day even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Now it was Elias's turn. He'd prepared words, but looking at Clara, they all seemed inadequate. Clara Dillard, you saved my life on that platform, not just physically, but in every way that matters. You saw past the wheelchair to the man I was trying to become. You stood up to Tom Carson with a skillet when you could have walked away. You chose me when choosing me cost you. His voice cracked. I can't promise I'll never fall. I can't promise I'll never need help. But I promise I'll always get back up. I'll always fight for us. I'll love you with everything I have, for as long as I'm breathing. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. Father Martinez had to clear his throat several times before continuing. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Elias, you may kiss your bride." Clara bent down, meeting him where he sat, and kissed him with all the love and promise and future they'd built together. The church erupted in applause. They were married. Against all odds, despite everything, they were married. The dinner at Mrs. Henderson's mansion was everything she'd promised. Elegant without being ostentatious, abundant without being wasteful. Long tables held food contributed by half the town. Miguel's mother had made tamales, Mrs. Chen brought dumplings, Mrs. Rodriguez offered empanadas. Silver Bend's diversity was on full display, a potluck of cultures united in celebration. Speeches were made. Father Martinez told stories that made everyone laugh. Mr. Warren praised Elias's courage during the fire. Mrs. Chen spoke about the importance of community. Even Mrs. Henderson raised a glass, toasting courage, love, and the future of Silver Bend. Through it all, Elias and Clara sat together, hands intertwined, occasionally stealing glances that said more than words. They'd done it. They'd survived, fought, won, and now they were building something permanent. As the sun set and the party continued around them, Clara leaned close to Elias's ear. "Can we escape for a bit? Just the two of us?" They slipped away, wheeling through Mrs. Henderson's garden to a quiet spot overlooking Silver Bend. The town spread below them, lights beginning to appear in windows, smoke rising from evening fires. "This is ours now," Clara said softly. "Not just a place we're surviving, but home." "Home," Elias echoed, testing the word. It fit. "What are you thinking about?" "About Margaret. About that train platform. About how if she'd accepted me, I never would have met you. I'd be in some loveless arrangement trying to prove my worth to someone who'd always see me as less." He pulled Clara closer. "I used to think that rejection was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Now I think it might have been the best. The universe has a twisted sense of timing, but good taste in outcomes." He kissed her, soft and lingering. "Thank you for finding me in the mud, for helping me up, for everything that came after. Thank you for being worth finding." Clara rested her head on his shoulder, both of them watching their town settle into evening. "What happens now, after the wedding, the celebration, after everyone goes home? We live, we work, we build the life we've been fighting for." Elias thought about the storage room behind the laundry, about the plans he and Clara had been making. "I talked to Mr. Warren about expanding the mercantile's bookkeeping. Father Martinez wants help organizing the church's records. Miguel's father asked if I could teach him English in exchange for carpentry lessons." "You're going to be busy." "We're going to be busy. You're still running the laundry with Sarah gone." "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that." Clara sat up, her expression both nervous and excited. "What if we expanded? The laundry does good business, but we're limited by space and equipment. What if we brought in another partner, bought better equipment, maybe even hired more workers?" "That's ambitious." So was standing up to Tom Carson. So was changing the town council's mind. Why stop being ambitious now? Her eyes shone with possibility. "We could build something real, Elias. Not just survive, but thrive. Create jobs, help other people the way we were helped." Elias felt something ignite in his chest. The same spark he'd felt in the cavalry when given an impossible mission, the same determination that had carried him through 3 years of rebuilding himself. This was what life after survival looked like. Purpose, growth, building something that mattered. "Let's do it," he said. "Let's build an empire of laundry and bookkeeping." Clara laughed, the sound pure joy. "An empire, I like that." They sat there as darkness deepened, making plans and dreaming futures. Behind them, the party continued without them, their absence barely noticed. They'd return soon, rejoin the celebration, but this moment was theirs alone. Two people who'd been broken finding wholeness in each other. A month passed in a blur of work and adjustment. True to their word, Clara and Elias expanded the laundry, bringing in Mrs. Rodriguez as a partner and investing in new equipment. Business boomed. Elias's bookkeeping services attracted more clients, his reputation for accuracy and honesty spreading. They moved from the storage room to a small house on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but theirs. Silver Bend was changing too. The immigrant families, emboldened by Elias's example, were starting businesses and claiming space in the community. The town council, under pressure from Father Martinez and others, was making the town more inclusive. It wasn't perfect, change never was, but it was happening. One evening in early May, as Elias and Clara sat on their new porch watching sunset paint the mountains, a rider appeared on the road from Denver. He dismounted at their gate, and Elias's hand instinctively went to the rifle he kept nearby. But the man held up empty hands. "Mr. Boone? I'm not here for trouble. I'm looking for Tom Carson. His brother sent me from Denver. Apparently Tom never arrived there like he said he would." "We haven't seen him since he left Silver Bend," Claire said carefully. The rider nodded, unsurprised. "Figured as much. Brother wanted me to check anyway. If you do see him, could you let me know? Family's worried." He handed Elias a card with contact information, then remounted and rode away. After he left, Clara turned to Elias with concern. "Do you think Tom's coming back?" "I don't know. Maybe he kept riding. Maybe he started over somewhere else. Maybe he's exactly where he said he'd be, and his brother's worried for nothing." Elias pocketed the card. "But honestly, I can't spend my life wondering. We have to live like Tom's gone and hope we're right." "That's not very strategic." "No, but it's the only way to actually live." Clara was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "You're right. We can't let Tom Carson haunt us forever. We won. We're building a life. That has to be enough." But that night, Elias woke from a nightmare about the train platform, about Margaret driving away, about being left in the snow. Except in the dream, when Clara arrived to help him up, she kept walking. Everyone kept walking. And he was alone again. Clara woke when he jerked upright, her hand immediately finding his in the darkness. "Bad dream?" "Stupid dream, about being alone." "You're not alone." She pulled him close, her warmth solid and real. "You're stuck with me, remember? For better or worse, in sickness and health, all those promises." "I know. Sometimes the old fears just resurface." "Mine too." Claire's voice was soft in the darkness. "Sometimes I wake up and panic thinking you're William, that I'm going to lose you the same way. Then I remember you're you, this is now, and the fear passes." "Does it? Pass completely?" "No, but it gets smaller, more manageable. That's how healing works. The wounds don't disappear, they just hurt less over time." They lay together in their bed, in their house, in their town, and let the fear run its course. By morning, it had faded again, manageable, if not gone. Summer arrived, bringing with it heat and thunderstorms and continued growth. The laundry was thriving, Elias's bookkeeping services were in demand, and their home had become a gathering place for Silver Bend's outsiders turned insiders. Miguel came by regularly for English lessons. Mrs. Chen brought them vegetables from her garden. Father Martinez joined them for Sunday dinners, his presence a benediction on the life they were building. One particularly hot afternoon in July, Sheriff Morrison appeared at their door with news that changed everything. "Found Tom Carson," he said without preamble, or rather found what's left of him. Body turned up outside Boulder. Been dead about 2 months by the coroner's estimate. Looks like he tried to rob a merchant. Merchant fought back. Tom took a bullet he didn't recover from. Elias felt something complicated twist through him. Relief, yes, but also sorrow for a life wasted on anger and violence. "His brother's been notified," Morrison continued. "Wanted me to tell you. Figured you'd want to know he's not coming back." After the sheriff left, Elias and Clara sat together processing the news. "I should feel glad," Elias said. "He was a threat. He hurt people. The world's probably better without him. But you don't feel glad." "I feel sad. That Tom never figured out how to be anything but angry. That he died alone and desperate, probably scared." Elias looked at his hands, remembering all the times Tom had threatened him. He could have been different. If someone had helped him the way people helped me, maybe things would have ended differently. Maybe. Or maybe Tom was always going to choose violence. "You can't save everyone, Elias." Clara's voice was gentle but firm. "You tried to be better than him, and you succeeded. That has to be enough." "Is it?" "It has to be." Because you can't carry Tom's choices along with your own. He made his decisions, they led where they led. You made yours, and look where they brought you. She gestured around their home, at the life they'd built. You chose courage over bitterness, love over isolation, growth over stagnation. Tom chose differently. That's not on you. Elias knew she was right, but the sadness lingered. That night, lying in bed, he voiced the thought he'd been carrying. I keep thinking about that train platform. If Margaret had accepted me, I might have become like Tom, bitter, angry, blaming everyone else for my problems. But because she rejected me, because I hit bottom and had to rebuild, I became this instead. This? Clara prompted. Someone who knows what rock bottom looks like and chooses to help others up. Someone who's been broken and uses that knowledge to understand other broken people. He turned to look at her in the moonlight. Tom never had that. Never hit bottom hard enough to have to rebuild. So he just kept hurting people until someone hurt him back. That's a very compassionate reading of a man who tried to destroy you. Maybe, but I think it's also true. Elias pulled Clara closer. I'm not glad he's dead, but I'm grateful I'm not him. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Clara kissed his shoulder. You're a good man, Elias Boone, even when you don't want to be. August brought Silver Bend's Summer Festival, a celebration of the town's founding. In previous years, it had been an exclusive affair dominated by the old guard families. This year, Father Martinez and the town council, pressured by their changing constituency, opened it to everyone. Elias and Clara attended together, wheeling through the crowded main street where vendors sold food and children played games. They were greeted warmly by dozens of people, no longer outsiders, but integral parts of Silver Bend's fabric. Look at this, Clara said, gesturing to the diverse crowd. 6 months ago, half these people would have been excluded. Now they're celebrating together. 6 months ago, we would have been excluded, Elias pointed out. Exactly. We changed this town, Elias. Maybe not completely, maybe not perfectly, but we changed it. That evening, as the festival wound down, Father Martinez found them and pulled them aside. The council wants to talk to you both about a proposition. They followed him to the church, where Chairman Davies and 2 other council members waited. Davies looked uncomfortable but determined. Mr. and Mrs. Boone, thank you for coming. We have a request, or rather, an offer. He cleared his throat. Silver Bend is growing. We need someone to help manage that growth, coordinate between the different communities, help new arrivals integrate. We'd like to create a position for that purpose, and we'd like to offer it to you, Mr. Boone. Elias was stunned. You want me on the town council? Not exactly, more like a liaison position, working with the council but also with the people. Someone who understands what it's like to be an outsider, who can bridge the gap between old Silver Bend and new. Davies seemed genuine in his offer. It would come with a modest salary and official recognition. We think you're the right person for this. Can I think about it? Of course. Take a few days, discuss it with your wife, but we hope you'll accept. Silver Bend needs people like you, people who push us to be better than we are. Walking home through the warm summer night, Elias and Clara debated the offer. It's a good opportunity, Clara said. Official recognition, steady income, a chance to help shape Silver Bend's future. It's also political. I'd be representing the council to people who might not trust them, and representing those people to a council that's still learning to include them. I'd be caught in the middle of every conflict. So, basically what you've been doing anyway, just with pay and a title. Elias laughed. Fair point. He considered it seriously, weighing pros and cons. What do you think I should do? I think you should do what your gut tells you. You've never steered us wrong before. His gut said yes. Said this was why he'd come to Silver Bend, why he'd survived rejection and Tom Carson and the town meeting. Not just to find a place for himself, but to help create a place for others. I'll do it, he decided, but only if they agree to some conditions. What conditions? The position needs real authority, not just symbolic. I need to be able to make recommendations the council actually considers. And I want to guarantee that we keep pushing for inclusion, not just maintaining the status quo we've reached. He looked at Clara. I didn't fight this hard to settle for halfway. That's my husband, Clara said with pride. Never settling for halfway. Elias accepted the position, and Silverbend entered a new phase of development. His work was challenging, often frustrating, sometimes heartbreaking, but it was also meaningful in a way nothing since the cavalry had been. He was building something that would outlast him, creating a community that valued courage over comfort. Clara's laundry business continued thriving. They hired 2 more workers, both immigrant women who needed the work. The operation expanded beyond laundry into general household services. Clara had a gift for business strategy, for seeing opportunities others missed. We should open a second location, she proposed one evening over dinner. That's ambitious. Everything we do is ambitious. Why stop now? She spread out plans she'd been drafting. There's space available near the new mining camps. Lots of workers, lots of need for laundry service. We could hire more people, maybe even provide housing for workers. You want to become a tycoon. I want to create opportunities the way opportunities were created for us. Her expression was serious. Every person we hire is someone who gets a chance, someone who doesn't have to feel worthless or unwanted. That matters to me. It mattered to Elias, too.